a popular and fun-loving college student.
Mindy was a very bubbly person. She just always seemed to be happy.
She had a light in her eyes, and she accepted everyone.
Is found savagely murdered in her apartment.
There was a belt wrapped around her neck and appeared to be a broken-off knife still stuck in her throat.
Police need to determine, was this a sinister obsession?
Mindy, I know what happened to you. God picked the beautiful flower.
He had called and left numerous messages on her cell phone.
Just really a strange type of relationship.
A crucial piece of evidence.
There was some material under the fingernails of her left hand.
I know you got a mark on your hand. How did you get that?
Shines a light on a dangerous predator no one saw coming.
I was very shocked. I think everybody was.
He was not the man we thought he was.
I don't think I would ever expect that outcome at all.
Hey, Mindy, it's Danny. Anyway, you can just give me a call back. Okay, bye. Hey, Mindy, it's Tony. Hey, Jamie's trying to get over with you. Bye. Where are you? Okay, bye.
I remember trying to call Mindy a few times and she wasn't answering. So me and my friend Danielle drove and parked in front of her apartment across the street. I ran inside. I knocked on the door and there was no answer, and it wasn't locked. And so I opened the door and I stepped in. And about 2 steps in, I saw something on the ground right in front of my feet. It was Mindy. And then I noticed something around her neck.
Horrified, Mindy's friend rushes outside to call 911.
About 10 minutes before 9 o'clock at night, dispatch called me at my house and said that they've got a hysterical caller on the phone. I got the address and it was 1 block from my house. When I arrived, both Danielle and Tony were very distraught, very upset.
The apartment was located on the 2nd floor of the building. As I entered, I could smell a very strong odor like an ammonia disinfectant. The body of the victim was laying across the entry hallway.
And it appeared her throat had been half cut open.
Detectives begin their investigation and identify the victim as 22-year-old college senior Mindy Morgenstern.
I knew Mindy. She was a student at the college. I'd seen her at a lot of their events, and to see that it was her, I was really surprised and quite shocked.
There was a belt wrapped around her neck and appeared to be a broken-off knife still stuck in her throat.
It appeared that the belt was applied to the neck prior to the neck being cut.
Investigators find an empty bottle of disinfectant beside the body.
Somebody had poured the disinfectant over her body, possibly trying to destroy any type of evidence.
The killer tried to cover their tracks, but investigators find something they missed.
There was some material under the fingernails of her left hand where possibly Mindy had scratched her assailant.
We felt that this was going to be a DNA forensic type case based on materials that were found on Mindy's fingernails.
And to preserve that, the hands are placed in bags for autopsy. She had a purse around her right arm. Her wallet was laying just outside of the purse.
It didn't appear that they'd been gone through or anything removed from them. There was clean laundry around the body and a laundry basket. It almost appeared as if she was attacked as she was going in the door with that laundry. It did not look like the apartment had been ransacked or gone through, so it didn't appear that theft was a motive in this killing.
There was no sign of any forced entry into the apartment.
It told us that the person was either in her apartment or followed her in.
Her cell phone was located, and the first missed call on that phone was at 12:47 p.m. on September 13th. That gave us some indication as to what time the attack may have occurred.
By 10 p.m., more than 9 hours after the first missed call, detectives have little to go on as they work into the night at the crime scene.
When we first left the scene the following morning, we had no clear indication of who may have done this.
Police reach Mindy's sister to inform her of the murder, and she delivers the tragic news to her parents.
The front doorbell rang. And I said, "Who's there?" And Rebecca, our daughter, she said, "It's me, Dad. We got some bad news."
And then Rebecca said to me that, "Mom, Mindy is dead." It was just like somebody taking a knife and just sticking it right into your heart. I just wanted to try to just say, no, this isn't real, this didn't happen. I didn't want it to be true. She had such a loving, loving heart, and I loved her very much.
Born in Bogota, Colombia, on April 29, 1984, Mindy was adopted as a baby by Valley City farmers Larry and Eunice Morgenstern.
The first time I saw Mindy, she had the biggest, darkest, most beautiful eyes that I had ever seen.
It was pretty amazing to see this little character in the basket that she brought home to be part of our family.
Mindy was the youngest of 4 Morgenstern children, 3 of them adopted by Larry and Eunice.
Mindy was very much a tomboy. And as she grew up, she got so beautiful. She didn't really realize that she would be looked upon as somebody that would turn boys' heads.
After high school, Mindy moved to Valley City and dove headlong into college life.
She just seemed to enjoy all the friends that she had there.
Mindy was a very friendly, outgoing, bubbly person. She just always seemed to be happy.
She had a light in her eyes, and she accepted everyone.
Mindy's future was looking bright until the stunning attack that cut her down in her prime.
It was very difficult to see Mindy's body in the condition that it was in when we found her. I want to find out who did this, because she was loved by a lot of people in our community.
Back at the crime scene, Mindy's 2 friends tell detectives they weren't the only ones to see Mindy's body.
When Tony found Mindy at the scene, she screamed, which alerted a man in a neighboring apartment to come out to see what was wrong.
He was there when I first entered the apartment complex, and they showed me where Mindy was located.
He told investigators that he checked for a pulse using the back of his hand to not leave any fingerprints on the victim.
It was a little odd because people don't describe things like that, like using the back of their hand so they don't leave fingerprints and things like that.
If he was there to help, I couldn't understand why he'd be worried about something like that.
Police identify the man as Robert Linz and soon notice a telling detail about him.
He had scratches on his hands that would correspond to someone trying to get your hands off of them when they were being attacked.
Had Mindy scratched Robert as she fought for her life?
Robert Linz, having those scratches, being in the same building, he certainly needed to be looked at.
A lot of times, a person at the crime scene is a person that committed the crime. And if any evidence of them is found, they have an excuse for saying why it was there.
Coming up, detectives uncover a world of secrets.
She reminded me so much of my wife in her younger days.
It's like, I don't want you talking to her.
It was kind of weird.
It turned out upon checking his background that he had a felony record.
And as they zero in on a killer,
I was absolutely certain we had the right guy.
a stunning setback turns the case on its head.
I just thought, oh, it's all over with now. They're going to let him go.
This case was a shock to everybody.
When we found out who the person was, it was just, wow.
Police investigating the murder of 22-year-old college student Mindy Morgenstern have just identified their first suspect, her neighbor, Robert Linz.
When officers met Robert Linz, they noticed some scratches on his hands.
And he also used the back of his hand to see if she was deceased or not. His concern was he didn't want to leave any fingerprints or DNA in the apartment because he had nothing to do with the incident.
Suspicions aroused. Police bring Robert Linz into the station for an interview.
Did you know her?
I knew her in passing, seen her every day.
All he knew about her is that she was a pretty girl and that she lived in the apartment building.
When investigators dig into Robert's history, they find something troubling.
It turned out upon checking his background that he had a felony record.
I got popped. Let's see, with a stolen car, had a gun. My original sentence was 2 years and 8 months.
Robert Linz was in the criminal system out in California. He's street smart, and he knew not to leave fingerprints at a crime scene.
Detectives ask Robert how he got the scratches on his hands.
All your hands are really cut up and stuff. Is that normal from work?
Yeah, this is an everyday thing.
Handling steel and stuff?
Yeah, all day long, steel. I get cut pretty bad, constantly.
He claimed he worked at a place where they built steel buildings and stuff like that, and he got the bruises on his hands from his job.
Police cut to the chase and ask Robert where he was on the day Mindy was murdered.
No, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary, regular day work.
What time did you usually start?
I'm there like 5 minutes to 7.
Robert Linz told investigators that he had been at work that day from 7 in the morning, and he didn't arrive home to his apartment until about 5:30.
We talked to his employer. He did work all day. He did work with steel, so it's very easy for him to cut his hands. So there was really nothing to put him at that apartment at the time the crime occurred.
Still, police aren't ready to rule out Robert just yet.
We asked him to provide DNA sample, which he agreed to.
While they await DNA test results, police canvass Mindy's neighbors.
We were looking for anybody that might have seen something, heard something, so we can get a better timeline as far as when this might have happened.
While going door to door, investigators are pleased to see a familiar face.
As I was collecting statements outside, I saw Mo Gibbs.
He had been living in the apartment building with his wife and stepdaughter.
Mo works at the Barnes County Jail, and due to the fact that he was a correctional officer, I would run into him quite often while he was working. And I also knew Mo because we played on the co-ed softball tournament together.
A guy in his position probably would be an excellent witness if he had seen or heard anything.
Mo Gibbs said that he knew Mindy as a person that lived in the building. He had seen her come and go.
The investigator asks Mo if he noticed anything unusual that afternoon.
Mo had said that he went with his wife and stepdaughter for lunch, then came back to the apartment at about 12:45 and started packing and loading boxes as he and his wife were going to be moving out of the apartment.
He mentioned that when he went into the apartment complex, he could smell a strong, distinct odor of a disinfectant.
Other than that, he claimed that he didn't hear or see anything.
So we were working with a timeline between the first missed call at 12:47 p.m. and the disinfectant being smelled shortly after 1 o'clock p.m.
So we figured she probably was deceased prior to 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
To rule them out, police collect DNA samples from Mo and the other building residents.
All the DNA samples taken during our interviews were sent to the state crime lab.
In search of new leads, detectives turn to Mindy's loved ones.
I just didn't think there was anybody that would want to do anything like that to her.
Investigators push Mindy's parents to think hard about anyone who might have had a problem with her.
Mindy's mother mentioned that Tony had had this boyfriend that wasn't such a nice person. His name was James.
I was dating James Robinson at the time, and he was doing some bad things, and I was taking the brunt of it. And Mindy didn't really care for him because she had known that there was times that it got pretty scary.
Mindy did bring him up at one time, something about him being on drugs or something.
Mindy was trying to get Tony to quit seeing James, and that may give him some reason to hold a grudge against Mindy.
This James Robinson didn't look like he wanted his girlfriend, Tony, to be friends with Mindy.
She did, obviously like a friend does, get out. You need to leave. He's not a good guy. This isn't a good relationship.
In trying to help her friend, had Mindy made a deadly enemy.
It seemed like an attack was personal in nature. It made me think that maybe this guy had something to do with her death.
Investigators are hunting for the killer of popular college student Mindy Morgenstern. They now suspect James Robinson, who may have held a grudge against Mindy for trying to turn his girlfriend Tony against him.
So James was called in to do an interview to see what we could glean from him.
Did you know Mindy pretty well?
I knew her from going to visit Tony at work, and she'd be there or whatever, and we'd get together every once in a while, go out and eat her.
Police ask James if he has a criminal record.
James said that he had, in the past, had trouble with illegal drugs. He had been charged, but he was trying to stay out of that lifestyle.
As James talks, detectives notice suspicious cuts on his hands.
Did you do your hand? Looks like you got a...
Yeah, it went right through a window. Blood like something fierce.
Looks pretty fresh.
Police press James on his whereabouts at the time of the murder.
What were you doing during the day?
I know I had 4 hours of community service left to do it.
James told investigators that he went to do community service from these previous charges. He then went to a friend's house and went back home sometime 5 o'clock or later. We checked, and it was verified that he had been at those locations that day.
Even though James's alibi checks out, investigators collect a DNA sample in order to officially rule him out. As they review evidence from the crime scene, autopsy results arrive.
The autopsy of Mindy's body indicated that she had died from asphyxiation and due to the cuts to her neck. There was no indication that Mindy had been sexually assaulted.
Still awaiting results on DNA collected from Mindy's fingernails, detectives turn to her coworkers for new leads.
Mindy had been working at a restaurant in Valley City as a waitstaff. It was important to interview Mindy's coworkers and see if they knew of anyone unusual in the restaurant that stood out to them. There was a man that lived in a motor home across the street from the restaurant.
Mindy told coworkers that he made her feel really uneasy, and he was always in there bothering them. So hearing that information, we decided to interview him.
What's your full name?
Ralph Albert Walter.
So how long have you been in Valley City?
Well, I don't know. You could say I'm a drifter, but
Mr. Walters didn't have any ties to the area, just kind kind of an odd character.
You remember anything particular he did on Wednesday?
Oh, that was the day that gonna change the oil in the motorhome.
He really didn't have a good alibi for when Mindy was murdered.
Just as with previous suspects, detectives spot a potentially damning clue.
I know you got a mark on your hand. How did you get that?
When I put that oil filter on.
Have you had any type of altercation or disagreements in any of the restaurants with anybody?
I can't think of any.
He claimed he never bothered anybody in the restaurant where Mindy worked. Claimed he didn't know who she was.
But Mindy's coworkers tell a different story.
They all said that he was in there quite often.
Mr. Walters would have seen her coming and going at least. Would that give him a reason to follow her? We really didn't know at that point.
Red flags were waving, of course, but I was real careful not to jump to any conclusions too early on in the investigation.
Detectives collect Ralph's DNA and let him go. But they're not ready to clear him just yet.
We keep him on the list. We're hoping DNA samples, if he was involved, would eventually tie him into it.
2 days after the murder, the wait for answers starts to take a toll on Mindy's family.
That was the hard part, not knowing what was going on and what happened and why.
It was like living someplace in another world, and you just wanted answers.
3 days into the investigation, detectives catch a break when they find disturbing voicemails left on Mindy's phone after she was dead.
You know my number, sweetie. I miss you. I love you. You're my inspiration. Please help me. Please help me, Mindy. I can't continue without you. Please help me. Some way, help me.
Detectives search the number and discover that it belongs to a man named Rodney Kuznia.
After Mindy had passed away, he had called and left numerous messages on her cell phone.
Investigators rush to find out who Rodney Kuznia is and why he called Mindy after her murder.
Mindy's friends had told us about a previous boyfriend by the name of Kyle Kuznia. They had been very serious and they had broken up the prior year. Mindy's phone indicated a lot of calls between she and Kyle's father, Rodney.
We thought this was really odd because why would an ex-boyfriend's father be so interested in Mindy?
There was some indication from Mindy's friends that Mindy had told Rodney to quit calling her.
It's been 3 days since 22-year-old Mindy Morgenstern was found brutally murdered in her apartment. Police have a new suspect, an ex-boyfriend's father who left suspicious voicemails for Mindy after her death.
Mindy, this is Rod. I know what happened to you. Please don't hear your voice. Can't take it. I love you, kid. God picked a beautiful flower. I'm sorry that happened that way. It happened to you.
It just was really odd why Mindy's ex-boyfriend's father was leaving these messages, why he was so infatuated with her, and obviously he had feelings for her.
Eager to learn more about Mindy's communication with Rodney, detectives start by questioning his son, Kyle.
Kyle was Mindy's ex-boyfriend, and Mindy, I think, still had feelings for Kyle.
It was found that Kyle had broken off his relationship with her a year before and was planning to get married to someone else and had really had very little contact with Mindy since that time that they had broken up.
I feel a little bad that maybe I could have handled it a little differently.
Have you had any other contact with her?
No, that was the last time I ever talked to her. I know she would kind of get information kind of through my dad. Him and her would continue to talk.
After verifying that Kyle was working out of town on the day of the murder, detectives turned their questions to his father's relationship with Mindy.
It's like, I don't want you talking to her. 10, 20 years down the road, you guys are still going to be talking, and it's kind of weird.
It is kind of weird.
Yeah.
It was actually ruining his relationship with his father because Rodney was so involved with Mindy still.
I even asked my dad to, but I would appreciate it if you guys would stop talking.
Rod Kuznia had an almost unhealthy amount of contact with Mindy, and then that continued even after Kyle and Mindy broke up.
The calls were very frequent, like multiple times daily, and it really made us wonder, did Mindy want him to quit calling her? Did that make him angry?
Detectives bring Rodney Kuznia in for an interview.
He was at least in his 50s, and we weren't sure what it was that he wanted out of Mindy.
You and Mindy became, as you call it, friends. She dated your son.
Correct.
I don't understand the relationship.
Well, you'd have to know Mindy. She was quite the bubbly character. She reminded me so much of my wife in her younger days.
Detectives press Rodney about the messages he left after hearing of Mindy's death.
I did call after I heard the fact and left a message. I know it's really stupid to do that, but they wanted her to pick up and have it. What did you tell her? Oh, God picked the perfect flower.
It was just really a strange type of relationship between a man that was her boyfriend's father and her.
Detectives press Rodney on his whereabouts at the time of the murder.
Rod Kuznia indicated that he was working on his farm with his two sons from 7 in the morning till early in the evening.
We checked and verified that, yes, he had been at work that day.
Detectives collect DNA from Rodney, but with nothing concrete against him, they must let him go.
We still thought that it was such an odd relationship that we certainly wouldn't close the book on looking at Rodney any further.
The pressure to find Mindy's killer only increases as the community becomes gripped by fear.
It was super scary because you didn't know who it was. It could have been anybody. You were scared to go out by yourself. You were scared to do anything. It wasn't safe Little Valley City anymore.
6 days after the murder, Mindy's funeral draws hundreds of mourners.
We had the funeral at the high school gym because we didn't think everybody could fit into the church while there was over 500 people at the funeral. The police told us they would have some undercover agents watching because they didn't know for sure if this person was, after her or after us. And you get kind of paranoid of anything like that happening until they finally catch the right person.
The day after Mindy's funeral, investigators receive surprising news from the crime lab.
The state crime lab called and said that we have a positive match of the DNA.
The DNA extracted from under the fingernails of Mindy matched an unsolved brutal sexual assault in Fargo 2 years previously.
And when we found out who the person was, it was just kind of silence. Then there was a shock.
1 week after the murder of 22-year-old Mindy Morgenstern, detectives received DNA test results that turn the case on its head.
The DNA from every one of the suspects, Kuznia, Walters, Lind, and the others, all came back as not a match to the DNA found under Mindy's fingernails.
I asked, who is it? They told me it was Mo Gibbs.
When they got the match, it was just, wow.
The DNA match of Mo Gibbs was really unexpected for us.
I knew him personally. He was a correctional officer, and it really caught me off guard that somebody in the law enforcement community would have done something like this.
When detectives look deep into Mo's background, they discover a hidden past.
Mo Gibbs was not the man we thought he was. When we started digging into his background, we had found out that he'd actually changed his name. We found out that he was involved in a drive-by shooting, and he had served 5 years in prison.
Also, his DNA matched this reported rape in Fargo from 2 years previously.
Given Mo's violent criminal past, detectives come up with a strategy to lure him into the station.
We had called Mo and asked him if he would be willing to come in, just to eliminate him as a suspect.
We're playing on his friendship with law enforcement. The idea was to get him in, lock him into a story, and then immediately give him the polygraph.
Mo Gibbs lived in the apartment building that Mindy lived in, and he said that he had seen her around, but he really didn't know her at all. Mo said that he had worked at the jail the previous night, had gotten home about 7 in the morning, and then he started packing and loading boxes out of the apartment.
Anything unusual that you noticed in the apartment building?
Nope. I didn't notice anything out of the ordinary the whole day. You know, I was back and forth.
Scratches were observed on Mo's hands, and Mo stated that he got those scratches from moving boxes. The polygraph operator asked him if he'd ever been in Mindy's room or in her apartment.
I went to her place one time, and that was probably either a week and a half or 2 weeks ago.
He stated that she was trying to carry a laundry basket and some other things all at the same time, and he assisted her in carrying that laundry to her apartment.
I'm thinking that he wanted to have an excuse for having evidence in that apartment.
With Mo's story in place, the polygraph can begin.
Regarding Mindy's death, do you intend to truthfully answer those questions?
Yes.
Did you injure Mindy and cause her death?
No.
At the conclusion of the polygraph examination, the examiner felt that there was some indication of deception.
There's a little bit of indication there that something is bothering you about this, and you know, I guess I just want to try and get it resolved.
I mean, I don't know nothing about it. I mean, as far as anything else, I wasn't there, so it's not bothering me that I know. I mean, because I know I wasn't there.
Okay. What do you know about DNA?
Nothing.
Nothing? How would you feel if I told you that your DNA matches DNA that we found on Mindy's body?
I'd be like, that wasn't true, so I know I wasn't there, so.
At that point, we didn't think that he was really going to ever admit to anything, at least that day.
We're in a bind here. Your DNA is matching what we found on her, under her fingernails.
I don't know how my DNA was under her fingernail.
When we get DNA back though, and it says, this is the person that matches this person out of so many million, we can't argue with that, Mo. Plus, I'm gonna let you in on something else here. The DNA that they match, that they brought up, it also matches the DNA that was found on a girl that was sexually assaulted 2 years ago in Fargo.
Okay.
He was arrested immediately after that interview and charged with murder.
Could you stand up, please, and put your hand behind your back? We have an arrest warrant for the murder of Mindy Morgenstern.
News of Mo's arrest opens a floodgate of shocking accusations.
A number of female inmates in the jail where Mo Gibbs worked came forward and said he's been doing sexual stuff to us in the jail for weeks or months.
Mo Moe is charged with 6 felonies for the sexual assaults and 1 count of first-degree murder.
It was a very, very much a shock when they revealed who was arrested.
I was very surprised and very shocked due to the fact I knew him personally, but it was a great feeling to get the person who had done this horrific crime.
We went to trial in Minot, North Dakota, provided evidence to the jury there about the DNA under her fingernails, the scratches on his hand.
Despite the evidence against him, Moe's lawyers mount a strong defense.
Their argument was the DNA found in Mindy's fingernails was probably touch DNA that she got from doorknobs that Moe Gibbs had been touching.
I went into the jury deliberations believing strongly that we'd proved our case beyond a reasonable doubt.
On July 12, 2007, the jury returns to the courtroom with news that takes everyone by surprise.
The jury deliberated for a fair period of time and came back as a hung jury and could not reach a decision.
We were so sure he was gonna go down, but they just got him off. You kind of went home and you were thinking, what are we gonna do now?
Corrections officer Moe Gibbs has just been tried for the murder of 22-year-old Mindy Morgenstern. But when the verdict comes back a hung jury, Mindy's loved ones are left fearing the worst.
I was very shocked. I think everybody was. I don't think I would ever expect that outcome at all.
When we heard it was a hung jury, I just thought, oh, it's all over with now. They're gonna let him go.
Was it possible that Moe had not killed Mindy after all? Or was a murderer about to go free?
When a hung jury like that happens, it's extremely disappointing and hard to understand for people because it's just a temporary setback.
I was absolutely certain we had the right guy.
In the Minot trial, the defense, the one thing they really hung their hat on was that trying to say it was just touch DNA.
We felt it was obvious that to get DNA under your fingernails, it wasn't from touching any kind of doorknob.
So we wanted to totally rule that out, and we're able to find another expert to help us do that.
On October 22nd, 2007, more than a year after Mindy's murder, Moe Gibbs goes on trial for the second time.
The expert described this as a vigorous assault. The amount of DNA was not from touching a doorknob or a laundry basket.
The prosecution lays out further evidence, carefully building the case against Moe.
Moe Gibbs' phone was seized after his arrest. There were never times when he went for an hour or more that he was not texting or doing something with his phone.
He got off at 7 in the morning from his shift, and he was continually either emailing or texting people until he had to go pick up his fiancée to go to lunch. He dropped her back off around 12:30 or 1 o'clock, and that's when we believe he came back to the apartment building. Mindy's last missed call was at 12:47 that day, and for the next 2 hours, Moe Gibbs was doing something else other than sending texts or sending emails.
With DNA and other evidence placing Moe at the scene, the prosecution lays out their theory of the murder.
I believe that Mindy was carrying clothes into her apartment, and Moe Gibbs was in the hallway and got her in there and pushed her on the floor and attempted to rape her.
I think Mindy fought back, and things went drastically wrong.
I think what happened was he tried strangling her with a belt. It wasn't going as he wanted it to. She wasn't dying fast enough. So he got a knife and he stabbed her. And then when he got done, he finds a cleaning solution, dumps it on her body. And then he gets the heck out of there.
Then he starts back with the texting and emailing and went on with his life.
As Mo's second murder trial concludes, prosecutors have one final card to play.
There was a cellmate of Mo Gibbs while he was awaiting trial that had told investigators that Mo had admitted to killing Mindy.
Gibbs had told him that he'd done it, he'd do it again if he had the opportunity.
As the jury deliberates for a second time, Mindy's loved ones nervously await the outcome.
And I was wondering, what's going on? I wanted to know things. I wanted to hear what was coming out of their mouths.
On November 16, 2007, after deliberating for over 27 hours, the jury returns with the verdict.
We, the jury, do find the defendant, Mo M. Gibbs, guilty of the crime of murder.
For killing Mindy Morgenstern, Mo Gibbs is sentenced to life without parole.
He got a 12-year sentence on the unsolved rape and 15 years on the jail sexual assaults that had happened.
It was a relief that they finally caught the person, that he wasn't going to be out there to do it to somebody else again.
The fact that Mo Gibbs is going to be in prison, it was finally over with. We could finally go on and just try to get through life the rest of the time that we had.
Mo got what he deserved. Because of Mindy's actions and her strength, we were able to get the DNA that we needed, and that DNA helped us solve this case.
Though justice is served, nothing can dull the pain of Mindy's loss.
Oh, I miss Mindy so much.
And now since she's gone, I've had to turn into
A pregnant woman who vanished.
Kelsey was 8 weeks pregnant, last seen in Pueblo, visiting her boyfriend.
Friends and family would get text replies back, but they said that it just didn't quite sound like Kelsey.
I did have a sinking feeling in my stomach.
This unknown man is seen walking to Kelsey Schelling's car and is seen driving away with the car.
I mean, we're trying everything. Breaks my heart.
Almost 2 years after Kelsey's disappearance, a mysterious message giving everyone hope comes through that Help Find Kelsey Facebook page.
It was saying, if I have information about Kelsey, can I remain anonymous?
When Laura responds, a man emails her saying, "Ma'am, please, your daughter is not dead." Kelsey Schelling grew up in the tiny farm town of Holyoke, Colorado.
Holyoke is around 2.5 to 3 hours away from Denver.
It's quiet. It's kind of have your own way. Perfect place to raise a family. Yeah, real good place. Yeah, safe. You hope it anyway,
Holyoke is definitely agricultural. There's only one stoplight. And if you want to go to a Walmart, you've got to head west to Sterling. That's 50 miles away.
In the early 90s, Kelsey's parents, Doug and Laura, owned the local grocery store in Holyoke. Kelsey and her brother Colby seemed to be living out the American dream. I first met Laura Saxton back in 2016 when 2020 was first looking into Kelsey's story.
She's just always been a little firecracker. Hi, Cal. Hi, Cocoa Bean.
Kelsey. Kel.
She wasn't a kid that wanted to stay up till midnight, where you usually have to fight your kids to go to bed, like at 8:30. That's when she wanted to go to bed. She'd go into her room and pull back her covers, and each animal had to be in a certain place, and everything had to be just perfect.
When she got to be 2, 3, 4 years old, she was feisty. You'd try to give her a kiss and she'd slap me pretty good, so I kind of learned my lesson, you know.
My first impression of Kelsey, she was just an active, outdoors, fun-loving girl, liked to do a lot of sports. When my daughter and Kelsey first met up, their true love was playing basketball together.
I was her coach, yeah. Here she is right here.
Wow. She's a point guard?
Mm-hmm.
When we were still in elementary school, her dad took us out and let us drive on the dirt roads, which is pretty common around here. Kelsey could just laugh about things like that, and her laugh made us laugh. She'd start to giggle, then you would start to giggle, and so that's what made being around Kelsey so special.
Kelsey was a tiny little thing, you know, shorter than me.
The Kelsey that I knew didn't take a lot of crap off of her classmates. You know, she wasn't afraid to stand her ground. But as Kelsey enters her teens, the Schelling family is rocked when Doug and Laura decide to divorce.
Going through a divorce is really hard as a kid.
Yeah, the split of our parents certainly had an impact on both of us.
Colby.
Colby lived with me and Kelsey lived with her mom. It was a real dark time for the whole family.
It was a rough age. You know, after her dad and I got divorced, it was just she and I together alone for a lot of years.
She was in a bad emotional place, and I don't think that was due to her character and nature. I think that was circumstantial.
When Laura and I was going through a divorce, she was on antidepressant pills. And she ended up taking like 3 of them or something.
She ended up in the hospital for several days, and it was pretty scary. I mean, I thought we were going to lose her at that point.
She was in a coma?
She was.
I felt like it was a turning point. I mean, when any young school-age kid has parents who are splitting up, that's a lot to take on. She actually stopped doing all of the sports and activities. It seemed like she was more removed.
I think Kelsey was just looking for a change. She wanted to figure out what was her niche.
Kelsey was always, I think, working through, how do I be better? How do I grow? How do I move past this?
Our senior year, she was the prom queen. You don't get that without showing people kindness and respect and truly being embraced by your peers, you know.
Kelsey taught me, she taught me perseverance.
Eventually she moves on, she goes to Northeastern Junior College. What did she want to do with her life?
She wanted to get a degree in psychology. I think in her heart she wanted to work with children.
We officially became roommates January 2011. If all of us were bored at 3 o'clock in the morning, she'd be the one to say, let's go cause problems, I guess. Not bad problems, she was just, out for a good time. She loved to have fun. That was her thing to do.
And for a while, carefree Kelsey is back. And then she meets Dante Lucas. He's about to change her life forever.
It was a big deal that she was dating Dante. He was part of the basketball team. They were kind of the popular kids and everything. By the time Kelsey got to know him, she felt proud that she knew who he was because he was somebody to know. He had dreams of making it big in the NBA.
Kelsey thought she met the man of her dreams.
Marker.
Please say your full name and give us your title.
Lisa Wayne, attorney at law. Well, I had the privilege of being down in Pueblo in the 80s, and I was a public defender. Pueblo's a small town in southern Colorado. Used to be a steel mill town. The steel mill shut down in the 80s.
Pueblo was founded and built by people that came from all over the world.
We're the home of the Pueblo chili.
Everyone that lives there is so proud of this town.
Kelsey's love interest, Dante Lucas, lives in Pueblo. Sarah Lucas, Dante's mother, is raising all 4 kids on her own in this Colorado town set on what's called the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains. In the town of Pueblo, a 6'7" star athlete stands out.
I coached Dante Lucas in youth football. He was a coach's dream. He was a real polite kid, wanted to learn the game of football and just really quiet. Dante Lucas was super close with his mother, Sarah. On the football field, she was one of the most supportive parents. For Dante, football wasn't his sport. I'd say he's a better basketball player, which happened later in his career through high school here in Pueblo.
Dante Lucas was a very well-known basketball player. He was going to be the one who made it out of Pueblo.
He had dreams of making it big in the NBA.
It was obvious that he wanted to pursue it, but the family spoke more about it than he did. We were told by Dante's mom, Sarah, that he was getting contacted from North Carolina and Kentucky. Their dream was that he was going to make the NBA and make a good life for himself.
When I first met Dante, he was a freshman here at Central High School. He was 6'7". If you have that kind of size, you know, you can make a lot of things happen.
It just amazed me as a guy in class that was so quiet was just as popular as he was.
He was a really good role model for the young kids in the neighborhood.
His attitude was always good. He was good with his teammates. He just matured into a very good basketball player.
His overall drive as a student from day one, it wasn't up to snuff. As a teacher, I'd try to get him involved with the rest of the class. I talked to him about that several times.
Whether it was his grades or his skill, Dante didn't get into an NCAA school, but he wanted to continue to play basketball. Dante gets recruited to Northeastern Junior College in Sterling, Colorado. He's playing basketball when he meets Kelsey Schelling, and they begin dating.
Kelsey and another one of our roommates actually went to a basketball game and were scouting out the cute boys on the team, saw Dante and decided to go up and talk, and that's how she and Dante met. By the time Kelsey got to know him and really got kind of involved, she felt proud that she knew who he was because he was somebody to know. They spent a lot of their extra free time together.
When did you first meet him?
I never met him. I saw him play basketball a couple times.
Kelsey never really said anything about bringing him home to meet the parents.
He was not committed to her by any means.
Kelsey could have had anybody, but she kind of always took attraction to people that needed help, that she thought she could turn around.
I believe that if Dante was, failing or had bad grades, that his basketball career at the school would be definitely on pause. I don't honestly think that Dante really cared to learn. Kelsey would try to help him. He would just seem very disinterested and not really care.
I think she just hoped if she was good enough to him that, he would realize that, she's the one.
I think Kelsey stayed with Dante because she found someone that gave her attention even if it wasn't the right kind of attention. And I think Dante was with Kelsey because he got money from Kelsey, borrowed Kelsey's car, basically lived a life that everyone works for but didn't have to do anything for it. Just had to be there.
There were good days in the relationship with Dante, and then it just went south. He would play with her heart. I could definitely see some bubbliness fading out as he broke her spirit.
Kelsey texts Dante, "I'm really hurt. The way you talk about me to other people is your true feelings. I guess I'm just a fool. I'm so heartbroken." Days later, Dante would respond, "My phone's been dead the past few days."
And then afterwards she'd be like, "Oh, well, he's better. He's going to be better." And then she'd be happy.
Dante left Northeastern Junior College because he was kind of done with his studies.
After Kelsey leaves Northeastern Junior College, she lands in California, but she doesn't stay there long. Why did she decide to leave?
Mostly it was financial reasons.
Where did she go from there?
That's when she moved back to Colorado. Was living in Denver in her dad's apartment, and she had started working at Floor & Decor.
When did she start going out with Dante again?
Over the holiday time frame, November, December, he would stay with her, but then he'd go back to Pueblo sometime.
Were you worried that he would come back and what that would do to her?
Absolutely. I saw what it was like before, and I didn't want that to happen to her again. She didn't want that to happen to her again, because she knew the kind of person that she became when she was with him.
How in the world did they get back together?
I don't know. She missed him, I guess.
Kelsey has a surprise for her family. She's pregnant.
She called me when she found out she was pregnant, and she was stressed, you know, very stressed. I could tell she was scared to tell me. Just told her, I will support you. It's going to be okay. She was happy.
Did she tell you anything about Dante's reaction?
She said he was mad.
She and Dante would be texting, and he would stop responding either during arguments that they were having. She would then get upset, wait to hear back from Dante, and left in limbo, and it was very aggravating for her.
Kelsey texts Dante, "You were my best friend. The only thing I lived for day after day. What happened to us? It wasn't supposed to be like this."
One time I'd talk to her and she'd say, you know, he's kind of coming around and Dante will never abandon the baby.
But a child with Kelsey was not in Dante's plans.
Kelsey gets a text from Dante, and he says that he has something for her. He alludes to a surprise, and he wants her to come to Pueblo.
Kelsey had come home. When she was here, she slept a lot. I knew it was hard on her working full-time in Denver. Now with the new pregnancy, she was really tired. I said, I will support you. Whether Dante is in the picture or not in the picture, it's going to be okay. She was happy. She wanted that baby. She wanted to be a mom.
She was in a good place.
Yes. So I'm thankful for those couple of days that we got before she went missing.
My name is Zach Hillstrom. I am a reporter at the Pueblo Chieftain. I think that people have been trying to fill in the blanks about what happened to Kelsey from the time that it happened, and not just when the mystery seemed like it might be a permanent one. On February 3rd of 2013, Dante Lucas, her boyfriend, was trying to convince Kelsey Schelling to come visit him in Pueblo that day. She responded with a firm no. It seems like they fought a lot that night. Just before 3 a.m., Kelsey texted Dante, "You don't have to be in a relationship with me. You don't have to marry me. You don't have to have a happy little family with me. You don't have an obligation to me. You're good. Don't worry. Good night." Lucas's response to that was, "Oh, I know all of that. Thanks for stating that for me."
So it was February 4th, and Kelsey had taken 3 home pregnancy tests. So she went into the doctor and had the doctor confirm to her that she was actually pregnant. She got the sonogram done. She even had the photo in hand of her sonogram. She was able to share that with her mom.
What did you think when you saw the baby?
I was happy. I knew that she was happy.
She showed up to work probably 10 minutes late. She just had her ultrasound. She was really excited. She was in a great mood that day.
That morning, Kelsey told Dante that she had finished her appointment and that her due date was September 13th. Lucas's response to that was cool. He asked her to skip work and come to Pueblo. She texted him, "I'm not going to come get you so we can fight all day." He texted back, "I don't want to fight at all. I want to give you this." She writes back, "Give me what?" He says, "Just wait and see for yourself. You probably wouldn't believe me if I told you anyway, so you can see for yourself."
Kelsey decides to go down to Pueblo after work.
She clocked out of work at a little bit after 8:40 p.m. and hit the road to see Dante in Pueblo.
So Denver to Pueblo drive right down I-25. It's about 2 hours long. It's just one straight path. Not a lot of people are out on the roads. It is a lonely, quiet drive. while she's driving down to Pueblo, Dante sends her a text saying, "Let's meet at the Southside Walmart." She parks her car there.
She texted him at 10:20 saying she'd arrived, and he replied that he'd be there shortly.
She's waiting, and she's getting impatient, like any girlfriend would.
At 11:10 p.m., he still hadn't shown up to the Walmart.
That's when Dante says, "Let's meet at our spot," which is in the neighborhood of his grandmother's home, and that's where Dante was staying at the time. She moved her car there from the Southside Walmart. She was just parked on the side of the road in this residential neighborhood. So then she's left waiting there again, and she's still impatiently texting him.
The last confirmed message from Kelsey was sent at 11:18 p.m. She was asking Dante, "Where are you? I've been here for over an hour just waiting."
The following day, the 5th, she didn't show up for work. So I tried calling her, couldn't get a response. So then I shot her a text message asking her where she was, why she wasn't at work. Got a text message back right away saying that she was in the hospital having some tests done. And she said that she was not having a baby anymore, it was growing in the wrong place.
I tried calling her on Wednesday. She didn't answer her phone, which is kind of pretty rare. And then I texted her, I said, "Hey, give me a call." I got a text message back, said, "I'm not feeling good, I'm on the couch, I'll call you tomorrow."
I kept trying to call, and she wouldn't answer. Toward the end of the week, it was going directly to voicemail. So then, in the back of my mind, I'm starting to get concerned.
After Kelsey had driven to Pueblo, there was never a phone call that was answered from her phone.
Kelsey is not the type of person who would, not talk to her friends. She was glued to her phone.
Friends and family would get text replies back, but they said that it came in a voice that just didn't quite sound like Kelsey. It was just short, quick responses.
Generally, any text message I had from Kelsey, words were spelled and there was punctuation, and they didn't have that.
I got to looking at the text message and it's like, man, I don't think that was her.
Why didn't you think that was her?
Just the verbiage in it and stuff. I mean, it just didn't seem like, her texting me.
Then on that Saturday morning, it's like the whole world just unraveled. All of her friends started contacting us saying, we've been trying to reach Kelsey and we can't reach her. I called Doug, her dad, and said, something is wrong. And so then we all drove up to Denver that day. Went into the apartment. There was no sign of her in the apartment. And that's when we called the Denver police.
Family members were visibly upset. They were frantic, actually, almost feverishly asking for any help they could get in trying to locate her.
Did you reach out to Dante?
And I did contact him to ask him, if he knew where she was.
What did he sound like on the phone? Because the call that you're making to him is, "Kelsey, the woman that you are with, the mother of your child, is missing. We are desperate to find her."
Nothing, no. Not worked up, not, just...
He's not scared? What can I do? How can I help?
No, he just says, if I hear from her, I'll let you know. And then a little bit later, he got back with me. He said, "I heard from Kelsey. She called from a private number. She said she doesn't have her phone. And she said she'll be getting a hold of you."
Intimating that she's alive, she's out there.
And I said, "Well, can you track that number?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll try and figure out what the number was." And then, of course, he never did.
When this case first came in, I called Dante. He was telling me that he had seen her and had talked with her and spent time with her more recently than any of her family members, any of her friends. After I got off the phone, I did have a sinking feeling in my stomach. The following Friday, February 15th, that morning is when we drove down to Pueblo to turn the investigation over to the Pueblo Police Department.
We, in the beginning, were trying not to call him a suspect, just to try to build a rapport with him and try to sit down and get him to open up.
Can you kind of tell me
just briefly what happened? Well, early Tuesday morning, she came down to Pueblo.
During the course of the interrogation with Dante Lucas, he reveals some pretty shocking things about Kelsey and about the baby.
To the mysterious disappearance of a Denver woman.
Pregnant woman who vanished. Kelsey was 8 weeks pregnant.
Last seen in Pueblo, visiting her boyfriend, Dante Lucas.
So when do you start talking to Dante Lucas?
We start talking to him fairly quickly as far as what is going on.
Police bring Dante in for questioning, and immediately he denies a romantic relationship with Kelsey.
Now, is she your girlfriend, or no? We never were actually in a relationship. Can you kind of tell me just briefly what happened? She came down to Pueblo, and we're talking, whatever. We she ended up, getting mad at me or whatever.
Dante tells Officer Robinson that Kelsey slept in her car in Pueblo.
He said that they met up again the following morning and that he brought Kelsey Schelling to Parkview Medical Center, where she went inside.
So, what's Parkview? And she went in and stayed for about almost 2 hours, hour 45 too.
We have no record of Kelsey Schelling ever being here at Parkview Medical Center.
Now, what do you check to find out if she was here or not?
We have a medical records system that keeps track of every patient that's ever walked through our doors.
So for you, there was no way she's ever here?
That's correct.
He alluded to the fact that she may have had a miscarriage.
She came out and she told me that she wasn't pregnant.
Just the day before in Denver, Kelsey's doctor told her that the baby was healthy.
So then after we left Parkview,
Dante claimed that he and Kelsey then went to the Southside Walmart. Kelsey was going to grab some snacks before she made the drive back to Denver.
She went to go get some snacks, like something to eat, because she was hungry. And then came back out, we ended up talking, and she ended up telling me, like, get out of the car at Walmart, and she didn't want to take me home. So I just left from Walmart, started walking home, and then my mom came and got me.
But surveillance video from Walmart reveals a different version of events.
He contends that the two of them are together, and clearly, based on the surveillance, it's one person. It's him getting out of the car, and no one else exits.
When the car was parked at Walmart on February 5th, police believe that it was Dante Lucas parking that car, getting out, and walking away. They have pretty good surveillance video showing it.
The car sat there overnight.
The morning of February 6th, this unknown man is seen walking to Kelsey Schelling's car, parked at the Southside Walmart, and is seen driving away with the car. We have no idea who that person was in that video.
It's a car that that person is familiar with, and we know earlier that Dante had the key.
Who do you think that someone was that came back and drove that car away?
There's similarities to Dante, but it's nothing that we can 100% say that is the person who drove it away.
When Dante Lucas talked with police, he didn't paint the best picture of Kelsey. He painted a picture of, just that she was kind of troubled.
She had bad anxiety, she was anxiety type, so she had pills for that.
What can you tell me about that?
She's told me before that she's ended up in the hospital a few times from overdosing, I guess.
Dante cast her to police as someone who had troubles with drugs. No?
I don't believe that, no.
She just one time she told me about suicide, but she told me she ended up in the hospital blinded multiple times.
When she was 15 years old, she did. So yes, she has had that in her past. But if she committed suicide, you would find her body. I mean, she was happy. She wanted that baby. She wanted to be a mom.
So at this point, Kelsey has been missing for more than a week. But on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2013, her car is discovered.
The car of a missing Denver woman has been found in Pueblo. Detectives will be examining Kelsey's car.
It was big news when Kelsey's car was found at St. Mary Corwin Medical Center. How did it get there? What happened to Kelsey?
I knew once her car was found that something horrible had happened, because there's just no way that she would have gone somewhere and left her car.
To find the car and no Kelsey.
And no Kelsey. We did not have any good security footage that could tell us who dropped off the car, how the car got there. Normally, if someone was going to go away for a few days, they take their car with them. So we are now leaning towards foul play. So we accelerate the case.
Police start working backwards. They start going through surveillance video, and what they find is pretty surprising. Less than 12 hours after she would have arrived in Pueblo, surveillance video shows Dante in her car at an ATM in Pueblo. He's driving and he takes $400 out of Kelsey's bank account.
But is it suspicious for you that he uses that card after the date where you pinpoint Kelsey was missing?
It is part of the suspicious activity, yes.
Because Dante withdraws money from Kelsey's account without her in the car, Dante is brought in for a second time by Pueblo police.
This is the second time I talked to you. Mm-hmm.
These detectives had a wealth of information to go at him.
Why'd you get the money?
The money? Mm-hmm. The what money?
$11.39 at the bank. You're on video, dude. In her car with her credit card. You're on tape.
Yo, this for the 400 they're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
This is for my phone bill.
Why didn't she go with you to the ATM? It's not in the car. It's on the video.
It may have been while she was over the hospital. Honestly, I'm not sure about like I said, like my time frame has been messed up.
The detective moves on to another topic, talking about why there's no record of Kelsey ever showing up at the hospital.
There's no record of her ever being at Parkview.
That's like all I have to say.
Now here's the thing. Instead of pressing Dante on these contradictions, they move on to an unrelated topic.
When you dropped her off, when she dropped you off at Walmart, where were you parked at?
I mean, like, apparently you guys know, so, like, I don't understand why you, like, I told him one time, like, I don't, that's all I can say about it.
When she dropped you off, when was that again?
Can I speak to a lawyer, please? So if you guys just keep asking the same questions over and over, and, like, I was like, speak to a lawyer.
Once he requests a lawyer, all questions come to a halt.
Unfortunately, this is a very poorly executed interview. I think it's a tremendous missed opportunity.
Once he shut down, our avenues of trying to talk to him end.
And how did you read that?
As the possibility that he knows something.
Dante Lucas was arrested on February 15th. They don't arrest him on murder charges. He was arrested on felony identity theft charges for using Kelsey's debit card at the bank that day.
But those charges were later dropped when investigators found out that Kelsey did, on occasion, give him permission to use her bank card.
How do you prove she did not or did give him permission at that time? And since you had permission to do it before, it makes it a very difficult case to prosecute.
He's released. He's, living his life.
Do we suspect foul play? Yes. Have we come up with a body? No. Dante is a person of interest in the fact that she's missing.
Hoping to get Dante to talk, police bring in the person who knows him better than anyone.
Mysterious disappearance. The disappearance.
Keep us up at night. This was a story that I spent 4 years working on and reporting on.
5 years of no answers.
I wanted so badly for there to be justice in this case.
To let you see
Even though Kelsey's car was found in Pueblo, Kelsey hadn't been found. Police, maintained at that time that it was a missing persons case.
When the charges of identity theft are dropped in March of 2013, police can't get Dante to talk again.
You'll have a chair right there. I'll grab your water and we'll be back in a second.
So they take a different tact. They decide to speak to his mother, Sarah Lucas.
I would love to clear Dante and move on. If Dante would come in, do a polygraph, we ask him like 5 questions. If he passes that, we can move on and look other directions.
I will relay that to his lawyer, and I know my son wants nothing more
and to find out what happened to her.
Detectives ask her about February 5th. That's the day that Dante was seen on surveillance camera parking Kelsey's car at Walmart.
Did you in fact pick Dante up?
I did pick my son up.
At that time, did you see Kelsey? Was she with him, or?
No, she wasn't with him then.
Do you know where she was?
Yeah.
Sarah gives Dante an alibi for his whereabouts on February 6th, when that unknown man is seen moving Kelsey's car from the Walmart.
On the 6th, Dante, or somebody that looks remarkably similar to Dante, I'm not going to say 100% was him, but went back and picked it up.
There's no way that was him. There's no way he was at home. I know my son. He's not capable of hurting anybody.
But it's been 3 years since this case happened. No one's been charged.
That's right. You have inconsistencies, lies, but without a body or any direct evidence that tells us something happened to her, to a homicide, you know, it may happen one day, but right now it's, you know, we haven't had any evidence to reclassify it.
You look at the Pueblo Police Department, they probably didn't have as many resources, and her family quickly became frustrated with how this investigation was progressing, or kind of the lack thereof any progress.
Kelsey's still not a victim, according to them. There's not been a criminal act committed, according to them. We just want an effective investigation done into Kelsey's disappearance.
Her family is pleading for your help.
We're doing everything in our power to find our missing loved one.
We tried to push Pueblo police for answers. We were there for every press conference, every event. We just weren't getting any new information from them at all. And to me, that was so frustrating.
The investigation really isn't being handled properly.
Laura Saxton always been a fierce advocate for her daughter, and I don't think she'll rest until Kelsey is found.
Many in Pueblo are not giving up on finding clues that could help find Kelsey Schelling.
Why do you think people feel so strongly about Kelsey's case?
You know, they can't believe it. You know, they try and imagine what if it was their child.
We're gonna break up again. Over here.
In May of that year when she went missing, they started doing their own searches. They didn't think police were looking hard enough.
The whole community was rallying. There were so many searches for her body all over the city of Pueblo.
This is probably one of the largest groups we've had in a while. After 3 years, that means a lot, so thank you.
Come on, kid.
People were scattering, just looking for any shred of evidence.
It's becoming harder to come back. I dread the trips, but I know I have to do it.
She comes home empty-handed. The one thing that she doesn't have is Kelsey.
They never found anything on those searches. Then those searches turned into anniversaries.
Kelsey Schelling disappeared 4 years ago this month.
And Kelsey's mother believes police are now closer than ever to finding her.
That turned into justice walks.
What do we want? Justice!
Around the Pueblo Police Department and the District Attorney's Office.
We appreciate you all so much. Your support keeps us going.
To put pressure on our system to do something here.
We're going to keep going. We're going to keep coming up with ideas. I mean, we're trying everything.
Kelsey's family offers a $50,000 reward for information.
So you feel like you're doing everything you can, even to this day, to find out what happened with Kelsey?
Yes. There is no lead we don't follow up. We followed up leads from psychics that call in. Well, they've had a vision on where Kelsey is, and we followed up those leads.
In an effort to get some more information, hopefully some tips and leads in the case, Kelsey's family also set up a Facebook page, Help Find Kelsey.
It was one source or one place where people could come together to generate information, maybe from even people that didn't want to call police.
You get a Facebook message.
It was from a woman saying, if I have information about Kelsey, can I remain anonymous?
It's so awful
He sold her into sex trafficking. I almost feel like I went insane. What if she is still out there somewhere?
We were on the ground to investigate, and I couldn't believe what happened.
Right when they're at the trunk, get ready. It's Ryan Smith, ABC News.
The car sat there overnight.
This unknown man is seen walking to Kelsey Schelling's car and is seen driving away with the car.
And Kelsey's just gone.
Kelsey had taken 3 home pregnancy tests.
Now, is she your girlfriend or no? We never were actually in a relationship.
The lead suspect stops talking.
Can I speak to a lawyer, please?
It's a dead end.
These are the stories that keep us up at night.
But an undercover volunteer befriends him.
I had to play the role that I didn't know what was happening, so I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, what is happening?
Okay, they're both rolling now.
There's a sting operation.
Right when they're at the trunk, get ready. We're about 10 seconds away. Marcus, Ryan Smith, ABC News. How you doing?
I know that my testimony could potentially help take him down.
The anxiety level was high, the tension was high.
A witness in the Dante Lucas trial
was found shot to death. Another moment where your jaw hit the floor.
When they came and told us the verdict was in, we all were just like, oh my God.
Her mother simply won't give up on finding Kelsey. For nearly 2 years, Laura Saxton had been on a desperate search for answers about her daughter Kelsey, who suddenly disappeared in February of 2013.
There will be a renewed search for clues in the case of Kelsey Schelling.
Just through seeing Laura Saxton, the tears, the sadness, the frustration, it all came, rolling out.
Many in Pueblo are not giving up on finding clues that could help find Kelsey Schelling.
The relentlessness of this mother's search really struck a chord with so many people in Pueblo. Scores of locals turned out to help Laura search all around the Pueblo area for any trace of Kelsey.
Over here on this other hike in 2 more groups.
The ride home is always really tough, going home empty-handed, emotionally and physically.
Is it hard to keep hope?
As far as the hope of actually finding her, that dwindles, every day.
But then, in October of 2015, nearly 2 years after Kelsey's disappearance, there's a shocking development. A mysterious message giving Laura hope comes through the Help Find Kelsey Facebook page. That's the page that Laura had set up to gather tips and leads on the case.
It was saying, if I have information about Kelsey, can I remain anonymous?
When Laura responds, a man emails her saying, "Ma'am, please, your daughter is not dead. She will be back home alive." The man offers a harrowing account of what really happened to Kelsey. He claims that Dante hired a friend to kill her and says Dante has no idea she is alive. He thinks she is dead.
And that the friend did not kill her. He sold her into sex trafficking. It made me sick. I mean, I could barely function. What if she is still out there somewhere?
The emailer says he needs money to help Kelsey escape. $50,000 in cash. So the plan is this. The money is to be brought to Vancouver, Washington, specifically to a local McDonald's restaurant. Then it's to be hand-delivered to a guy named Marcus, who would be wearing a red hat.
Once the money was exchanged, then this courier person would go and get Kelsey and bring her back to the McDonald's. I'll have to sell some stocks, which will take about a week, but I can push to expedite that process. I just thought, what if she's been out there and I could have found her and we haven't? I mean, it was just what if?
Laura sets up the meeting at the McDonald's in Vancouver to deliver the cash. But even though she's desperate for answers, she's worried that something criminal is going on. So she reaches out to the Vancouver police and asks them to go undercover to meet this courier.
felt like law enforcement from Vancouver should have been involved in the situation.
But just before the appointed time, the Vancouver police back out, believing it to be an internet scam and not an actual human trafficking plot. But 2020 had the McDonald's under surveillance to see if anyone would show up. Our cameras are rolling as a man with a red hat comes in.
That's him.
He sits quietly. But after no one shows up, he takes off.
Okay, you gotta move. Cut the engine.
Weird, eerie to see that they actually were, going through with this.
He's gone.
It was just all a matter of trying to get down to the truth of this.
As I was investigating this mysterious email, a contact of mine told me about another missing woman's case that proved to be the key to unraveling this mystery. In Portsmouth, Ohio, 1,200 miles away from Colorado, Megan Lancaster, 25 years old, has also suddenly disappeared.
Katie Lancaster is on a mission to help find her sister-in-law.
She's gone without a trace. We have her car and her wallet.
An eerie feeling like there's something, like we're gonna find something.
Months go by with no developments. Megan's family organizes searches and sets up a Facebook page to publicize the case.
And then, out of nowhere, he pops up.
A startling message comes through the family's Facebook page about Megan.
He says, I know where Megan is, and I can get her back.
Just like with Kelsey's family, the emailer says he can help Megan escape, but he needs money, $50,000. He directs them to bring $25,000 in cash up front to Vancouver, Washington, specifically to that same McDonald's, and deliver it to a man named Marcus, wearing, no surprise, a red hat.
What if he really does have her, and I can bring her home?
You should stick with the crew, behind the camera, with the crew.
To unravel just what's going on with this mystery, Katie agreed to work with 2020 to set up a sting operation.
Katie and I are going to be in one vehicle.
Just like Laura did 2 weeks earlier, she arranges a meeting to drop off the money in Vancouver at that McDonald's.
There are booths over here.
Katie, you said this morning that they sent you a text message.
They will be sending Marcus.
Okay, they're both rolling now. I would be going to this rendezvous with Katie, but wearing a hidden camera. As we walk into the McDonald's at the appointed meet time, we quickly spot Marcus, the man in the red hat, and walk over to him. Katie was instructed not to ask any questions, so I told Marcus, hey, the money is in the trunk of a car parked outside.
Right when they're at the trunk, get ready. We're about 10 seconds away.
Meanwhile, I was waiting outside with our camera team and a security guard in case this thing went sideways.
Okay, let's get ready.
As they head out to the parking lot, before the trunk is opened, I walk over to Marcus. I want to get some answers.
Marcus, Ryan Smith, ABC News. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Good. Why'd you come here to take $25,000 from Katie?
I don't know.
You don't know why you're here to take $25,000 from Katie?
Nope.
What are you here for?
Oh, to collect some money.
You see, Marcus claims he was suckered too, lured online into a supposed jewelry venture. He says he was supposed to pick up the money and then wire it to someone he's never met.
So a random guy tells you to go to a McDonald's twice in less than 2 weeks to meet people to pick up money, and you don't think anything of it?
I didn't think none of it.
We were told that you were going to deliver Megan to Katie today. Is that true?
I have no idea about no Megan or no kidnapping or anything like that.
This would be a scheme to extort money from families who have family members that are missing.
I didn't know nothing of this. I had no clue anybody was supposed to be exchanging nothing for a human being. If I did know, I would not have been involved in this situation.
So you've been here twice, coming to pick up money at a McDonald's. Your name is attached to this.
Just feel shaky inside.
I had no clue.
It's important that you be real honest with me.
Yeah, I'm real honest.
You have never heard of Kelsey Schelling?
Never.
Definitely a big scam. I want to know who's behind it.
But an FBI analysis of the emailer's Facebook page showed it used an IP address traced all the way to Russia.
In most scams, they're compartmentalized. So the person you may send to pick up the cash at a particular location may know nothing about what the scam is.
Then that's just 100% clarification that, this is some dirtbags out there you know, trying to get money off of these poor families.
But while the extortion plot that was torturing Laura was laid to rest, the roller coaster ride wasn't over. A sympathetic stranger who feels for Laura comes up with a shocking plan to go undercover on her own and befriend Dante to try to find the truth about what happened to Kelsey.
I knew that I was potentially putting myself into danger.
Dante Lucas?
And when we go to get some answers from Dante, she was right there with him.
What do you have to say to her family?
Even though Laura Saxton lives hundreds of miles away from Pueblo, Colorado, the news about her years-long crusade to find her missing daughter continued to resonate with folks living there.
Our top story tonight, the search for Kelsey Schelling. Today, law enforcement following new leads in the case.
We're going to keep coming up with ideas. I mean, we're trying everything.
I felt really heartbroken for her. As a mom, I couldn't even begin to fathom knowing that your child's out there.
It's spring of 2016 when Lauren Shore, a single mom living near Pueblo, says Laura's story inspired her to hatch an audacious plan of her own. Make Facebook friends with Dante Lucas, gain his trust, and meet up with him in real life, and just maybe help solve the mystery of what happened to Kelsey.
Definitely was nerve-wracking, but I felt like I could do it. So I messaged him on Facebook, and I told him that I was looking to meet new friends. He responded fairly quickly, within, I say, a couple of hours.
Lauren was eventually able to get Dante to meet her in person. When we shot this footage of Dante playing basketball in 2016, Lauren was there with him. She says it was only the second time they'd ever met.
We had went to a basketball court to just play around, shoot some hoops, and that's when a man with a camera came up to us.
Dante Lucas, I'm with ABC News 2020. The family of Kelsey says you're responsible for her disappearance. Is that true?
Who's Kelsey? I freaked out. I had to play the role that I didn't know what was happening, so I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, what is happening?
What's happening right now?
And he kind of just shut down and was like, I'll tell you about it later on. Don't freak out. It's okay. None of this is true.
As the weeks go by, Lauren says she's able to develop a close relationship with Dante.
We'd just hang around the family, watch movies, drink a little bit. He always smelt of alcohol. He comes off as very cocky, I feel like. He feels like he's just the man, and he can't do no wrong.
Just as she'd planned, Lauren says she got Dante to open up, to trust her enough. The time finally seemed right to ask him about Kelsey.
There was only a certain amount of period of time that he would talk about it. 1 minute he had no involvement, he had nothing to do with it, and then he would just shut down and start crying hysterically and get really upset.
But Lauren says something very unexpected happened with Dante. Her undercover relationship with him blossomed into romance.
I felt like he did genuinely develop feelings for me and did genuinely fall in love with me. He has this way about him that makes you just feel so sorry for him. In the back of my mind, I always kept that he is potentially a murderer.
Lauren says her relationship with Dante continued for about a year. But then something happened. There was an incident outside his house that made her realize she was in way over her head.
He's like, I want you to marry me. And he showed me the ring. I took the ring. At that point, I was kind of like done, because I didn't want to get in any deeper than I had already gotten into.
Despite all the efforts of this clandestine girlfriend, her work doesn't seem to be paying off, and the clock just keeps ticking for Laura Saxton. She's not any closer to knowing the truth about what happened to Kelsey.
I wasn't happy at all with how things were going, and I mean, that's one big reason why I wanted to do the first story with you guys. Was I was hoping that that would somehow bring something out into the light.
Tonight on 2020, when do you stop looking for a pregnant daughter who's vanished?
In May of 2016, our first 2020 program on the Kelsey Schelling case hits the airwaves. The very day of our broadcast, there's a big announcement regarding the investigation into Kelsey's disappearance. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation was going to join the case.
That was news to me, so I was kind of like, oh my God, this is awesome.
I think once that 2020 special aired, it really turned up the heat on Pueblo police and on this case.
Taking over the case, Pueblo Police Department Commander Eric Bravo and CBI agent Kevin Torres. Working together, they moved fast, turning it from a missing persons case into a full-blown criminal investigation.
It was a homicide investigation in our eyes, so I immediately started working on setting a plan into motion how we wanted to proceed.
Police got a tip that led them to believe Schelling's body might be in Dante's backyard.
It's not long before police dig up the yard of the house where Dante and his family had been staying.
So we thought, man, we really have something. But it went from elation to satisfaction. That day it just seemed like we were there, and then it slipped away.
During the investigation, Agent Torres finds out about Dante's relationship with Lauren Shore. When he interviews Shore, she reveals that Dante had made a key admission to her about Kelsey's disappearance. And it's about that Walmart surveillance video of the mystery man walking over to her car and then driving off with it.
She confirmed for us, Dante admitting it was him in the Walmart surveillance video. She also informed us that Dante admitted to her dropping Kelsey's car off at St. Mary Corwin Hospital. The piece of information that Lauren provided to us was a pretty crucial piece at that point.
Then, in late 2017, there's a huge development that will totally transform the case. A Pueblo man tells police that Dante and other family members had attacked him in front of their home and stolen $1,000 from him. Now that gives police a reason to arrest Dante.
I had information that Dante was leaving Pueblo and was heading to DIA, where he seemingly intended to board a flight to Tucson. And the concern was that he may take other efforts to meet friends in Mexico.
Boy, the anxiety level was high, the tension was high.
The time was ticking away, and the tires were turning on the road. And Dante was within 20 minutes of getting on a plane for Tucson, Arizona, when he was arrested.
When he was arrested, there was hope across the community that maybe investigators would finally get some answers in this case.
We decided that the next day would be the day that we would send a couple detectives back in to try and answer some of the questions that we didn't have answered.
During his interrogation, Dante finally breaks down and comes clean, confirming Lauren Shore's account that he was the one seen in that Walmart video.
So that information that he confirmed that was him was huge.
You see, it was that admission, combined with the wealth of evidence from text messages, cell phone records, and surveillance video already gathered, all of that was enough for prosecutors to move forward.
At the end of the day, I said, I think we have enough here to go forward. I ethically believe that Dante Lucas killed Kelsey Schelling, and I think we have the evidence to prove it.
A major development, the ex-boyfriend of a pregnant Denver woman who went missing 4 years ago.
He now faces charges of first-degree murder.
How are you thinking as his trial approached? Are you thinking justice will be done?
I put a lot of things on hold because I just was sure it was going to happen and, wanted to be ready to go.
So after 8 years, Dante Lucas is finally in court, and the prosecution has a surprise witness.
That just took the whole room's breath away. No one saw that coming. This story became such a big deal here in Pueblo because people want answers and they haven't gotten any for 8 years.
Dante Lucas, the Pueblo man accused of murdering his pregnant ex-girlfriend Kelsey Schelling nearly 8 years ago, is headed to trial tomorrow.
Did I think it was going to be a tough case? Absolutely. And we may not win it. But I owe it to the family. I think I owe it to Kelsey to go forward and try this case.
KRDO News Channel 13's Dan Beatty has been following this case and the trial for more than 2 years.
I was anticipating there to just be a mad rush of reporters who were going to try to get into the courtroom. I was very worried that I might not even get a seat. You could feel the anticipation. When I saw Laura Saxton walk into the judicial building, you could tell this was a day she's been waiting for a long time.
Denver 7's Liz Gilardi in Pueblo today for opening statements. Liz, you have been with this case every step of the way now for all these years.
The prosecution simply started out and they said, this is not a missing persons case. This is a homicide case.
The case that the prosecution was making right off the jump was, one, they were going to prove through text messages and surveillance video that Dante Lucas has to be the one responsible for Kelsey Schelling's death.
These were two people in a relationship. Kelsey Schelling became pregnant. Dante Lucas didn't want to have a baby. And he made sure that didn't happen.
I know that she had mentioned Kelsey Schelling's Chevy Cruze.
The prosecution said this car tells a story, and they told the jurors that you will see Dante Lucas moving this car around Pueblo in the days after she went missing.
The idea that someone can essentially disappear without a trace, I think, is kind of a counterintuitive thought for people to have.
Prosecutors think there's enough evidence to convict Lucas even without a body, but the defense disagrees.
In the opening statements, the defense said this is a missing persons case. This has always been a missing persons case. They said there's no body, there's no evidence. Why should you believe that Dante Lucas killed her?
They do not have a crime scene. They do not have a murder weapon.
Today, the jury got a detailed look at some of the text messages exchanged between them.
For the prosecutors, their goal was to show that those text messages showed intent, showed that Dante Lucas consistently lied, not only to investigators, but to Laura Saxton herself.
What they refer to as his luring of Kelsey Schelling to Pueblo.
The prosecution say that he lured her there to end her life.
We know that that's his phone. He admitted to those text messages. We know that that's his thoughts and feelings about it. That's direct evidence.
And the movements of their phones as well, as they were pinging off cell phone towers in Pueblo on the night of February 4th and the early morning hours of February 5th. I think that a lot of the case really centered around those movements.
Two pivotal witnesses testified in a high-profile Pueblo murder case against Dante Lucas.
First witness was Laura Saxton, and we were not expecting Laura Saxton to be the first one to take the stand. She didn't break down, but you can tell she's hurting. There's a lot of pain behind her voice.
I think that was really powerful for the jury to see. Her mom spoke to the fact that she absolutely wanted this baby.
Prosecutors today painted Kelsey Schelling as an excited mother-to-be, desperate to make it work with her boyfriend.
It didn't take long for the prosecutors to swing for the fences, calling some pretty shocking witnesses to the stand.
Ryan Rivera is a former Pueblo County inmate who considered himself to be a friend of Dante Lucas.
And when he took the stand, he said that Dante Lucas told him that they're never going to find Kelsey Schelling's body. That just took the whole room's breath away.
Ryan Rivera, he was the only person who came forward over the duration of this trial that really said, Dante told me he did this.
I wasn't in the courtroom, but well, jailhouse snitch on its face is just not credible. I mean, that's the assumption that we believe jurors have, and it's the assumption we have as defense lawyers. Why would this person do it? What's the benefit? What's the motive?
There was no deals made about charges he would get to plead to, time he would get to serve. There was no deals like that.
There were a lot of names on the prosecutor's list that I was shocked by, but Sarah Lucas certainly topped that list.
When you saw that Sarah Lucas was on the prosecution side, everyone wondered, what is she going to say?
The one important thing that I've kind of mentioned, she confirmed that Dante was the last person left alone with Kelsey.
The prosecution painted a picture of a troubled relationship.
Some of Kelsey's close friends testified. They pointed toward elements of domestic abuse in Kelsey and Dante's relationship.
Something worth pointing out was the prosecution and even the defense made it clear that Dante was using Kelsey for a number of things. For her money, Dante used Kelsey for her apartment in Denver, and Dante use Kelsey for her car. And his argument was, she lets me do it. The defense pushed the narrative that Kelsey Schelling popped pills, was an addict, that Kelsey, when she left Dante Lucas at the Southside Walmart here in Pueblo, that she was going to meet up with a drug dealer.
There's no single person, other than the defendant in 2017, who's saying that she was into drugs and that she was a party girl.
You didn't have the forensic evidence. It seemed like you were really relying on circumstantial evidence and the evidence of snitches and these other witnesses. That's pretty straightforward. Either you believe them or you don't.
The witness list yields more surprises. The ones who make it to court.
I know that my testimony could potentially help take him down.
And the ones who didn't.
Witness 31-year-old Roxanne Martinez was found shot to death.
That was a completely unforeseen development in this case.
Breaking on Denver 7, a key witness in the Kelsey Schelling murder trial found dead.
That witness, 31-year-old Roxanne Martinez, was found shot to death in Denver last week.
These are still very stunning developments.
Roxanne Martinez, a witness for the prosecution, was set to testify soon.
That was just an absolutely, completely unforeseen development in this case. People were reeling when that news broke.
Denver police officers were called to a residential area in southeast Denver on a report of an unresponsive female who was lying in the roadway. We determined that that individual had been shot one time and died from that injury.
Her dad is in shock, her mom, her stepmom. It's just tragic all the way around.
I think when a witness in any major case turns up dead directly before they're set to testify, I think, of course, people are going to think, was she killed because she was going to testify?
Denver police arrested a suspect in Martinez's killing, 29-year-old Emmanuel Chandler. Chandler has been charged with first-degree murder, but he hasn't entered a plea yet.
We don't have any connection between Mr. Chandler and Mr. Lucas or anybody associated with that trial.
Our concern was to make sure that people understood that while she was an endorsed witness, I couldn't comment on her testimony.
Nobody knows what Roxanne Martinez was going to say on the stand for sure, with the exception of maybe the investigators who talked to her.
But while prosecutors say they can't discuss what Roxanne Martinez would have said on the stand, 2020 has uncovered some revealing details about her. You see, back in March of 2016, a woman named Roxanne had reached out to Laura Saxton through that Help Find Kelsey Facebook page. Roxanne messaged that she used to date the guy Kelsey was pregnant with, and he told me what had happened and started crying.
I'm instantly like mixed emotions, like, okay, are you going for the reward, or, you know, are you for real?
When Laura asked, do you know where Kelsey is located? Roxanne replied, he told me everything. Yes, I do.
Basically, her information sounded very good and very promising, and so we really wanted to meet with her.
This mysterious woman agreed to meet Laura and her husband at a Mexican restaurant in Denver.
We were actually on our way there, and I tried to reach her by phone to let her know we were coming. She said that she was in the hospital and couldn't meet us. That was kind of the extent of what I really remember. And then, you know, past that, then, you know, that was all turned over to law enforcement to look into further.
Authorities say that woman was the same Roxanne who was killed during the trial.
I can confirm that CBI followed up and interviewed her, that we did have her as an endorsed witness, that we wanted to testify during trial. The thing that I'm steering clear from is I just don't want to talk about evidence that wasn't actually admitted during trial.
Martinez's killing shakes up the trial and threatens to overshadow the testimony of another prosecution witness who had a remarkable story to tell. It's none other than Lauren Shore, that woman who befriended Dante as part of a plan to try to find out what happened to Kelsey.
I know that my testimony could potentially help take him down, and that was realistically why I wanted to testify.
Shore testifies about Dante's critical admission to her, that he was the mysterious figure seen picking up Kelsey's car after it sat overnight in a Walmart parking lot.
I said, so that must have meant that you had dropped the car off at the hospital, correct? And that's when he said, yes, that was him that dropped the car off.
When the defense cross-examines Shore, they attack her credibility and her motives, at one point characterizing her as a sex informant because she had a physical relationship with Dante.
It's fair game, and if you're going to put yourself out there like she did and sleep with someone, the jury ought to know about that. You're having intimate conversations, and that casts a lot of suspicion on her as a witness.
The sex informant part really bothered me because I wasn't having sex with Dante to get answers out of him. I was playing my part and role as girlfriend. So to me, to be called such was really degrading.
On the very last day of its case, the prosecution played an interrogation video of Dante confirming Shore's account.
The clip that I played at the beginning of my closing was his phrase to detectives, "I lied from the jump. I moved the car." I wanted the jury to hear the defendant, in his own words, say, "I lied."
When it's the defense's turn to present its case, they raise a lot of eyebrows in court.
The defense didn't call a single witness to the stand. The defense immediately rested their case. And it was just another moment where your jaw hit the floor.
The burden of proof is on the government. It's simply messaging in a very strong way to the jury, they haven't done it. It's not guilty. So it's a strong message.
There was just really not a lot of hard forensic evidence to go off of. So as far as, what evidence they put forth to court that was irrefutable, that Dante Lucas killed Kelsey Schelling, I never saw that.
After a shocking final day of the trial, the jury was going to deliberate, and I had no idea what was going to happen at that point.
I think everybody was just like holding their breath.
Prosecution and defense have given closing arguments. The jury is now deliberating.
Well, on that last day of the trial, no one expected to get a verdict that day.
So now the waiting begins.
Yes. And I was prepared to camp out at the courthouse as long as I had to. I really thought I would be there all week, and we're really totally unprepared for when they came and told us the verdict was in. I think we all were just like, oh my God.
I mean, it was shocking how quickly they arrived at their decision, especially given just the amount of information they had to look at.
I can tell you, because the decision came back so early, all of our experience as prosecutors is that this was probably an acquittal, because juries tend to come to decisions more quickly on acquittals than convictions.
It was like standing on the precipice of a cliff and looking down. It was scary.
It was a very tense atmosphere in the courthouse while everyone was waiting to hear what the verdict was.
Even I was nervous, and I'm not affiliated with Kelsey Schelling's family at all.
People were wondering, does that mean Dante Lucas is going to walk?
I think everybody was just like holding their breath almost.
And then, when you hear the verdict, tell me how you're feeling.
Well, the words came out way too slow. Like, I feel like the judge was talking in slow-mo, even though he wasn't. I mean, I was just like, every word, it's like, okay, spit it out, please. And then he finally got to, guilty of first degree, and I think that was the first breath, like, I had taken in a long time.
This is a guilty verdict 8 years in the making, and even though Kelsey Schelling's body has never been found, the jury clearly felt there was
prison without parole.
It was just so emotional for everybody, for both sides. It's a sad story. It's a sad situation that didn't have to end up like this if he had just let her come home.
You mentioned it was a lot of emotions for both sides. Did you find yourself looking over at their side?
Dante was sitting right in front of me. I looked at the back of his head through the whole trial. But you know, the mother of his child was there, and she broke down, and honestly, my heart hurt for her, hurt for their child, because it didn't have to end up this way.
Ryan Rivera's testimony was the biggest bombshell for our trial. It had moved us all. I could hear the gasps even in the masks of fellow jurors.
When it came out that he was convicted, I think there was a great feeling of not elation. You know, you have to look at it from this side too. Mr. Lucas is a young man, and he was convicted of a criminal crime that shapes his life for however long he lives. I think it's every parent's worst nightmare that a child goes before you, and you can never fully heal that wound. I can tell you, I almost lost a child in the early 80s. And so I had a lot of sympathy with Laura and her family because I came that close to that tragedy. And that child was the lead prosecutor on this case.
So the elected DA is my dad, and Kyle McCarthy, who was obviously on the case with me, is my husband. And we, I don't think, had a night in the last 4 years that we haven't gone home and talked about Kelsey Schelling. Sometimes it's the first thing we talk about when we wake up. Sometimes it's the last thing we talk about before we go to sleep.
On Saturdays when we're driving kids around to soccer, a lot of times we're being told to stop talking about it because they can hear us in the front seat talking about it.
We both also had, and I mean, an incredible emotional pull to the family. That is a very special relationship, one that I will value for the rest of my life.
Well, I think, I mean, Michelle and Kyle with their closing, they're amazing. I don't even know what other words to use.
The first things that she told the reporters outside of the courthouse after the guilty verdict, yes, she was happy, but she was still devastated.
So we're very, very thankful for this outcome. But in the end, I didn't get Kelsey back. And that's what I wanted more than anything. So I feel like I didn't do something, I didn't push hard enough on something, or I didn't look enough on something to bring her home.
That devastation isn't going anywhere. Like she said, she has to live with that forever.
Her goal throughout all of this was to bring Kelsey home, give her a proper burial. So I know she had expressed that in some ways she felt like she had failed in her main mission.
I think the investigative team has some ideas where she may rest.
If that's where she is, that's just like the worst possibility to me.
That very first day that we met in September of 2016. I'll never forget it like it was yesterday, and it was just a special bond that we formed.
Kelsey's mom just battled and battled and battled.
8 years, I was hoping that it would never take this long. I grabbed my mother very tight and held her very close, held on to my dad's hands.
Since the trial's over, it's because and Kelsey still hasn't been found, so that I've just felt very empty this past week.
It doesn't feel final because we still don't know where Kelsey is, and we still don't know exactly what happened.
It turns out that prosecutors did present troubling evidence from the night Kelsey disappeared. That evidence provided a possible explanation to where her body could be.
We received information from the Pueblo landfill that there was some video evidence of a vehicle being there. You couldn't see what kind of vehicle. You couldn't tell who was in the car. Their lock to their front gate into the dump had been tampered with.
Well, it caught my attention when I grabbed the lock on my hand, and I said, well, somebody tried to get in here overnight.
The cell phone records, the pings were all out in that area. So, we suspected that's what happened.
If you heard the testimony of the landfill expert, it would be next to impossible to just find a body just by conducting a search of the landfill.
Who wants that for their child to be the final resting place? No one.
We want to bring her justice and bring her home with us, her and Kadri both. Kadri, that was the name that she was going to give the child.
I'm never going to recover without getting her back, and so I still have nowhere to go to take her flowers, to go sit and talk with her, take her balloons on her birthday, go to see her on the holidays.
Hi, Dad. Hi, Coco Bean.
How do you want her to be remembered?
A little girl with a really big heart, a really big smile, a really big laugh, beautiful eyes, silly. She was so silly. I miss being silly with her. I miss all the things that we didn't get to do together.
It was a real shock because, he was a neighbour.
It was a real inner feeling, we've got to solve this for this young kid here.
Obviously an evil man. I would find it hard to forgive him.
In our minds, there was more to tell. This couldn't be the first time that he'd done this.
On Sunday, November the 26th, 2000, a worried mother called the police, telling them that her daughter hadn't come home after Christmas shopping. When initial inquiries proved fruitless, West Yorkshire Police launched Operation Conifer, one of the largest missing persons investigations in their history. Despite all their efforts, it was 9 excruciating months before they found out what had happened to her. Bramley in West Yorkshire is a suburb of the city of Leeds. Once a picturesque village with a rich industrial past, it was redeveloped into the Bramley of today, but it has retained its strong sense of community.
People do gather, look after one another, so to speak, and like to see one another and have a chat.
Everybody knows everybody. They are pretty friendly. Personally, I don't know any nasty person that lives in Bramley as a community.
At 7 p.m. on Sunday, the 26th of November 2000, West Yorkshire Police received a phone call from a Sharon Hawkshead, reporting her 16-year-old daughter, Leanne Tiernan, missing.
Her mother gave us a description, and that was of a 16-year-old girl, slightly built. She was under 7 stones, with long brown hair, light brown hair.
Police immediately got to work interviewing family and friends to piece together her movements that day.
She waved goodbye to her family and set off on the short bus ride into Leeds with her best friend, Sarah, to buy some Christmas presents. Leanne bought Sarah some jewellery for Christmas, and she put those in her pocket, and they caught the bus back then from the city centre back to their home at Bramley. Leanne got off the bus with Sarah at Sarah's stop, which was 2 or 3 stops before where Leanne would have ordinarily got off. But Leanne, being the kind of girl she was, she wanted to make sure Sarah got home safely. And by waving Sarah off where she did, near to Sarah's home, that meant that as she entered the darkness of Huffley Gill.
By this time it was 5 p.m. Huffley Gill was a secluded, tree-covered ravine with a path at the bottom. It was no place for a young girl on her own, even one in a hurry to get home.
It would have taken Leanne probably about 20 minutes to walk from that point to get home. Just over half a mile, between half a mile and 3/4 of a mile.
At 5:30, Sarah rang Leanne's home, but Leanne wasn't there. Mum Sharon was concerned, but when she found out what route her daughter had taken, concern soon turned to alarm.
She realised that she'd walked through Huffley Gill, which is pitch black at that time of day, even though it was only 5 o'clock. Leanne's mum started ringing Leanne's phone frantically. It rang for about 20 times and just rang off. She rang it again. It rang for 4 times and then was seemingly cut off. Panic started to set in from that point on. And after a quick search round the guild by family and Sarah and friends, the alarm was raised and Leanne was reported missing.
It was now 7 p.m. and Leanne had only been missing a few hours, but police knew time was of the essence. The case was assigned to Chris Gregg, who was a detective superintendent at that time.
From the outset, when Leanne was reported missing, you hope that there's just going to be an innocent explanation, that she'll return, she's gone off to her friends, or there's a secret boyfriend that mum and dad don't know about.
Police started searching immediately, and it soon became clear just how massive the task facing them was.
That area is quite a dense urban area, a lot of areas to search. There's an area with lots of housing, commercial premises, there's a river, there's a canal, there are drainage shafts, there are a whole range of search areas that had to be considered.
The next morning, with Leanne now missing for 12 hours, Operation Conifer was launched. The hunt for Leanne was on.
And it was important that we literally, to use the cliche, left no stone unturned. And the search teams went through here, searching the whole area for anything as small as the small items of jewellery that we knew Leanne had bought that day for a friend, looking for the mobile phone, an umbrella, any telltale sign which could help us explain what had happened to Leanne.
It wasn't long before everyone in the community heard the news.
It did make people more cautious. There was lots of different rumours going round, you know, but nobody really knew anything.
It was clear that an early forensic response would be needed, so DSI Gregg called in the Forensic Science Service, or FSS.
Well, we became involved in the Leanne Tiernan case almost from the outset, once she had gone missing. For reference purposes, if she was found or if an offender came to light, we needed to know her DNA profile and we needed to get her fingerprints. So we actually took her toothbrush and got a DNA profile from that and matched that in with profiles from her parents. And we were also able to obtain her fingerprints from her diary.
After 5 days, the search was still coming up empty-handed, despite the police's best efforts.
The scale of the search to find Leanne was huge. It was one of the biggest search operations the force had ever undertaken. It involved 200 officers, specialist search advisors. It involved the dog section, the mounted section, the underwater search teams.
Peter Grant and his forensic team did what they could under trying circumstances.
The difficulty we faced was that there was no clear scene for us to focus on. You know, there was the last sighting on the bus, and she was obviously intending to walk all the way home, and the scene could have been anywhere between those 2 points, which was quite a large area. Because a lot of areas were being searched, a lot of items started coming in, but they weren't ones that ended up being relevant to the case.
Getting nowhere, on the 3rd of December, 1 week after Leanne Tiernan had last been seen, the police turned to the media for help.
We staged the reconstruction and they followed the same route, right to the point where Leanne had been last seen. Now, what struck me when we were doing the reconstruction, which was how black Huffley Gill was, I was just staggered at the vulnerable position she was putting herself in when she entered that gill.
Once aired, the response was immediate.
Following the reconstruction, we were starting to piece together some interesting sightings that people were telling us about and sounds that people had heard, and 2 were of interest to us. One was a lady who said that in the weeks leading up to Leanne's disappearance, she'd seen a man, a rough-looking guy with a dog, hanging around the entrance to Huffley Gill. And she was a little bit uneasy about this guy because he was trying to engage the children into conversation, the school children.
Straight away, the police got the witness to describe the man she'd seen, to produce an image.
Another lady remembered hearing a scream around the time that we know Leanne would have just about entered the gill. And that again, it might have been connected, it might not, but these two pieces of information were important to us.
On December the 4th, police published the EFIT.
We were looking at people in that area who walked through the gill with dogs, and we questioned and found lots of them. We eliminated them all.
With the search still in full swing, officers found out everything they could about the schoolgirl they were looking for.
Leanne was a typical 16-year-old girl who was a lot to live for. She had this radiant smile. She would do anything for anybody. She looked after her grandma, went to church with her, even though she wasn't particularly keen on going to church every Sunday morning, but she did it for her grandma's sake. She'd been in the Brownies, went into the Girl Guides, and she had a group of friends, very popular girl.
Sister Janet Durbin was the minister at the Methodist chapel where the family worshipped.
Leanne did stand out because she was always bright and shiny, always helpful, and she used to like to carry the flag for the Brownies and the Guides. And as she grew older, we started a Saturday night fellowship for the teenagers, and she used to be one that asked a lot of questions. We talked about all kinds of things that were going on in the world, and she was always up with a hand up and helping. And then Leanne used to like helping in the kitchen, preparing the pizzas and chips and things. It's just a normal young girl.
After 3 weeks, there were still no useful clues, yet police kept on going.
All the time, you're racking your brains. Where is she? What can have happened to her? We've searched 1,100 houses. We've searched drainage shafts, wells, railway lines, canal. We even lowered the canal, almost pulled the plug out and drained it down because it was easier and quicker to search it that way over 3 miles. And we still hadn't found her.
Over the next few months, police continued searching and questioning people of interest. But it was as if Leanne had disappeared into thin air.
The feeling and the belief that they will still be found safe and well never goes away. And I'm sure that is the case with anybody who's facing that particular situation of a young loved one particularly who's disappeared, that they'll be found ultimately. And personally and professionally, you know that the chances of being found safe and well are slim.
By July, Operation Conifer was in its 8th month, and although the physical searching had all but ended, the police hadn't stopped looking.
The network across the UK was fairly extensive that Leanne was missing, and we were getting calls periodically that a body had been found, and we were checking out. We got Leanne's DNA, so we could quickly eliminate anyone who had been found during that intervening period while she was missing.
On August 20th, 2001, almost 9 months after Leanne's disappearance, DSI Greg received some news that changed the investigation completely. Almost 9 months had gone by without a single clue as to where missing 16-year-old schoolgirl Leanne Tiernan from Bramley in Yorkshire had gone. The longer Leanne remained missing, the more the police suspected the worst. Then police got a call that was to change everything.
A dog walker was in the woods and saw what he thought was a bundle of rubbish that somebody had dumped. And he went over to the bundle and realised that it wasn't rubbish. There was something which he thought was a dead animal in the bags. And he gingerly opened the duvet cupboard and saw that there was some plastic sacks tied with twine at the top. And he broke into one of the bags and realised this wasn't a dead animal, it was a dead person.
Over the months, police had found dozens of bodies around the country that hadn't been Leanne.
But this one immediately felt different. It wasn't far from where Leanne had been last seen, only 16 miles. The body had been left in a shallow grave, and this just had all the hallmarks of somebody trying to dispose of a body quickly.
Immediately, the scene was meticulously searched.
So when our forensic team started uncovering this, it was found that the girl's body had been encased in 10 plastic bags and had been encased top and tail. So the first bag had been used to put the girl's body in, tied at the top with twine, and then a bag put the opposite direction, tied with twine. And the final bag had been secured around the girl's neck with an 18-inch leather dog collar with a buckle. That parcel had then been put into the duvet cover, and the duvet cover had been used to carry that parcel into the woods. Capturing evidence from this point onwards was going to be crucial for what seemed as though a major crime had been committed.
The decision was made to then retrieve that package intact and take it back to the pathology where it could be thoroughly examined and forensic samples taken, hopefully.
Having examined the crime scene, a profile of the perpetrator began to emerge.
I think the state of the body, particularly the use of ties and the later wrapping and marks of injury, did suggest that the perpetrator had approached this in a coldly efficient, ruthless kind of way.
The packaged body of the unknown girl was taken to the nearest mortuary at Harrogate. DSI Gregg followed soon after.
Living and breathing a case like this for months, I knew this girl. I knew everything about this girl. And the worst possible outcome was that she was now on this table in front of me. And I knew it was her from the moment I looked at her. And I've never had a feeling like it before or since. And there was just something at that moment in time that was so powerful, an emotion, that it was a real inner feeling, we've got to solve this for this young kid here.
Once the bags were opened, evidence was found that would prove key in identifying the killer.
When we found her, she had got her hands tied behind her back with 3 cable ties. And there were 2 black cable ties and a yellow one. The black one was around one wrist, the yellow one around her other wrist, and they were connected between the 2 with another black cable tie, like a daisy chain, in effect, and her hands tied behind her back. She'd been strangled with 2 ligatures. One was a dark woolen scarf with a red stripe running through it. And the other was a clear-coloured cable tie that was around her neck and pulled very tightly.
The pathologist was joined by one of Peter Grant's team.
It was very important that we had a forensic scientist at the scene, and she'd actually identified a tuft of fibre on the back of the jumper.
Although DSI Gregg felt certain the body was that of Leanne, a formal identification had to occur.
We already had her fingerprints that we'd taken from her diary, and we were actually able to compare those with the fingerprints on the diary and get a formal identification that this was Leanne Tiernan.
After months of hoping and praying for Leanne's safe return, it was time to tell the family.
The news that they'd been dreading and fearing for 9 months was now suddenly upon them. And I've nothing but admiration for the stoicism, the absolute dignity that Mum and Dad showed at that moment in time.
DSI Gregg was more determined than ever to hunt down Leanne's killer. Back at the mortuary, Peter Grant's team called in an expert in insects, known as an entomologist.
Within the forensic world, we use entomologists to assist with time of death, when someone dies and they're left outside, there is a clearly defined pattern of insects being attracted to the body, and they'll lay their eggs on the body. And the state at which those insects are present can give an indication of how long the body has been dead.
The entomologist quickly made a pivotal discovery.
He was identifying insects that wouldn't normally turn up until a few weeks after a body has started decomposing. They tend to turn up, you know, certain insects come first, then others, then others. He was getting some of the later insects. You know, maybe this body had been frozen, in that when you have a frozen piece of food and you defrost it, it tends to go off quicker, and there's a similar process happening here.
Investigators believe Leanne could only have been buried where she was found for 1 week, meaning she'd been kept somewhere else the rest of the time. The big question was, where?
This was as sinister as it gets. A young girl clearly been kidnapped. Where, we still believed it was in that Hoflegill area. But had been kidnapped, taken somewhere. Was it in the area she was now disposed of, or was it nearer to Bramley? These were all investigative considerations which we were still to find the answer to. For us as the investigation team, there were some really good forensic opportunities here, and we weren't going to let those opportunities go.
Leanne had been missing for more than 6 months, but the police never gave up trying to find her. And then when her body was discovered after 9 months, the missing persons case turned into the hunt for her depraved killer, who police and the Forensic Science Service team were determined to bring to justice.
With the suggestion that Leanne had been frozen or stored somewhere, it became important, and we wanted to know where that was. And I'd established on previous cases that one way of doing this was to look at nasal washings from bodies, because this gives you an idea of where people took their last breath, in effect.
Immediately, pollen expert Dr. Patricia Wiltshire was contacted.
I was called in to get pollen from her to see if I could envisage the sort of place that she had been. Now, we know she'd been buried in this woodland, but had she been anywhere else? Had she been kept anywhere else before she'd been put in the woodland?
Palynology, or the study of plant pollen and spores, was a tool police used quite often.
You've got pollen and spores in the environment, in a sort of mixture. And if someone goes along and picks them up, they will have certain mixtures of pollen, different amounts of different types of pollen, different types of spores on them. And then I know where these plants live and function, so I can envisage a sort of place they've come from. And if I do that, it helps the police find places.
Dr. Wiltshire went to the mortuary in Harrogate.
I irrigated her nasal passages because sometimes people breathe in pollen very deeply up into the nasal passages, right up into the top of the nose. So I irrigated those out, and I also washed her hair very carefully. And from those washings, I was able to get assemblages of pollen grains and spores that her hair had picked up. Later, I worked on the Duve cover, and what I found on the Duve cover matched up with what I found in the ant's hair. And I had pollen, plant spores, I got fungal spores. I also got the conducting elements in wood, of conifers and of flowering trees, woody plants. And they were charred. There was a lot of microscopic charred material. And I assumed, therefore, that she'd been in contact with something that had been burnt. It seemed like a bonfire because there was hardwood and softwood.
Armed with this information, Dr. Wiltshire began envisioning the sort of place Leanne had been to pick up these materials.
I said to the police that I thought it was a very neglected and downtrodden garden, that it had a bonfire in it. And I was also able to say that there was a privet hedge. There was probably either a plum or a damson tree close by. And also, the ground area was very, very neglected, with brambles and all sorts of plants that are weeds, really.
With Dr. Wiltshire's incredible insight, police just needed to find a suspect with a garden that matched. Unfortunately, not all the forensics was going their way.
Leanne's body, with the decomposition, had completely obliterated the potential for DNA and fingerprints on the items that she was encased in. But there were other opportunities that we considered really, really significant.
One of these was the duvet.
Unfortunately, although we did find some body fluids on this duvet, we weren't able to get any sort of DNA result, which was a major disappointment, I think, down partly to the condition of the body. But then we had to fall back on some other types of evidence from the duvet, and we noticed on there that there are a lot of animal hairs that look like dog hairs, all of a relatively similar colour and appearance, suggesting it all come from one dog.
The lack of DNA was a major concern.
We realised we had to fall back on some more traditional forensic methods and maybe build up a forensic picture that we could then use as an intelligence tool to identify an offender.
Detective Superintendent Gregg and his team went back to basics, hoping that something would point them in the direction of Leanne's killer.
The physical items which she was bound with, the cable ties, who'd manufactured them? Where were they being distributed or sold these? Who had possession of them and for what purpose? There was a yellow one, two black ones, and the one that had been used as a ligature, the neutral coloured ones. What's the provenance of these? We don't know until we start drilling down and finding out.
While the police got on with discovering where the cable ties and dog collar came from, Peter Grant and his team continued putting together their forensic picture.
We built up a jigsaw, if you like, of different pieces of forensic evidence. We had the twine, we had fibres, we had dog hair.
The items themselves mean nothing. It's only when you start finding out the backstory to the items that suddenly they become relevant. The fibre that was found on Leanne's back, we found out that that was a carpet fibre. And we got experts in Bradford, which is in the textile heart of the north, to help us with this. And they gave us the type of carpet that had very likely come from.
All of this forensic evidence needed a suspect to be of use. Then the dog hair on the duvet grabbed the team's attention.
From the dog hair point of view, although we could tell it was dog hair, we did notice that some of these hairs had quite decent roots, that if it was a human hair, we'd think, well, we could DNA test that.
The problem was no one had ever DNA tested dog hair in the UK. Then Peter Grant made an interesting discovery.
I found out that at that time there was a university in America that had actually established a method to carry out DNA testing on dog hair, so that was our next port of call, with a view to potentially doing some sort of dog mass screen DNA.
If it came off, it could be the break police needed. And that wasn't all. Information about the cable ties used to bound and strangle Leanne had been unearthed.
We found out where they were all manufactured, and 3 of them seemingly took us nowhere. But one of them, we thought this could be interesting. It was the yellow cable tie, manufactured by a UK company, and millions made. And so you think, seemingly, this is going to take us nowhere. But what was interesting about this, as opposed to the others, was that 90% of these were used by the Royal Mail. Could this be somebody who's got connections with the Royal Mail? Maybe, maybe not.
The twine used to tie up the plastic bags also had a story to tell.
It was a unique twine that had been put together from a forensic perspective, was absolutely terrific. You know, because you knew that if you could find more of that twine, you were going to match it up.
The team's momentum continued.
The leather dog collar around her neck We looked at this dog collar, manufactured in Nottingham. And it was a dog collar that many millions were sold worldwide. So we knew it was a long shot, and we worked out there were X number of pet shops in Leeds that sold these dog collars. We went to every pet shop, we asked them the question, we got nowhere.
While DSI Greg's team chased long shots, Peter Grant had gone to America with the dog hair to extract its DNA.
After a couple of days working with them, we were actually able to identify they had a reasonable method and that this was worth a go, and we carried out the test on 2 of our dog hairs, and we did obtain a decent dog DNA profile.
Now police could organise the UK's first mass dog screening in the hope of identifying Leanne's killer. Unaware of this result, police in West Yorkshire were looking at the 120 dog collar wholesalers in the UK.
113 were checked, and the detective got the answer back each time saying, no, no, no. Pet shop, pet shop, pet shop. We supply to. Company 114, based in Liverpool, gave an answer that the detective wasn't expecting, which was, yes, we do sell those dog collars, and yes, we do have a customer, a private customer in Leeds who bought one. In fact, bought 6 and paid for it on a credit card.
This was the moment DSI Greg and his team had been praying for.
And have you got the name of that customer? Yes. It's Mr. J. Taylor at Armley, Leeds. Thank you very much.
With that, 10 months after her disappearance, the investigation into the sickening murder of Leanne Tiernan finally had a suspect. The investigation into what was now the brutal murder of 16-year-old schoolgirl Leanne Tiernan from Bramley in Yorkshire finally had the breakthrough police had been looking for. The dog collar found around Leanne's neck had led police to a John Taylor from Leeds.
We found out he worked for a company called Parcel Force, which is part of the Royal Mail. He was living at home on his own in the adjoining township of Armley, which is adjacent to Bramley. He'd been divorced for 4 years, had some children, but they didn't live with him. He'd never been in trouble with the police. People knew him as John the Pet Man. He seemingly kept himself to himself, but we quickly found out that he had a bit of a nocturnal life as a poacher, liked to go out poaching.
The connection between the dog collar and ready access to Royal Mail cable ties was too much to ignore. On the 16th of October 2001, almost 10 months after Leanne's disappearance, police made their move and arrested John Taylor.
Of course, he denied any connection with Leanne, not having done anything wrong, and was denying that he'd had certain pets or animals because we were interested in pets that he'd had with our animal DNA that we were also trying to link.
News of the arrest soon travelled around the area.
It was a real shock because, you know, he was a neighbour. You know, you said hello to him. He used to sell pet food, and my kids used to go over to his house to buy pet food for the rabbits, and it was just a real shock.
John Taylor was taken for questioning, and the Forensic Science Services team methodically searched his house.
The immediate thing that struck us was that there were no carpets in the house. It's just bare floorboards everywhere. But it did appear that, certainly in some rooms, that he'd only recently taken up the carpets. And we actually identified that some of the tufts of carpet still clinging onto nails in the corners of rooms were actually the same red fibres we'd found adhering to Leanne's jumper.
The evidence police needed kept on coming.
The black cable tie that had been used to bind Leanne's hands, we found some broken ones on the fence in the garden outside, exactly the same manufacture and code. We found 2 more dog collars in the house that was still there that matched the same dog collar that had led us to John Taylor's door in the first place.
Also during the search, there was some rabbit netting found. John Taylor was quite into trapping animals. And the makeup of the twine used to make this rabbit netting was exactly the same as the twine that had been used to tie the green bags.
So all the critical items that to him were so insignificant suddenly were now coming back to haunt him.
With all this damning evidence mounting up, the forensic team called in Dr. Wiltshire.
I travelled up to Yorkshire, went into the garden, and it was amazing. The garden was so much like I'd envisaged. I just couldn't believe it. But there were two bonfires. There were the remains of two bonfires. But the elements that I found in Leanne's hair and on the duvet were on the left-hand side of the garden. Also, to approach that area, you had to go under a sort of archway, and there was a big, it was either a plum or a damson. There were no flowers on it, no fruits, but I knew it was a plum or a damson. And of course, I'd found that pollen. I'd found the plum and damson pollen. I'd found all these plants that were in the hedge and around, and all these weeds on the ground. I'd found the remnants of a bonfire in a hay, and I could say, it's on the left-hand side of the garden, not the right-hand side. And it was just, it just all came to life for me at that minute.
Dr. Wiltshire's accuracy was astonishing. At the police station, Taylor continued to be interviewed.
Faced with this overwhelming evidence, which we now had against him, he said he admitted he killed her, but tried to claim it was an accident.
John Taylor then gave his version of events.
He had gone to Huffley that Sunday afternoon with his dog to take the dog for a walk when he saw a young girl walking down the path. He grabbed the girl, told her not to scream. He had a scarf which he tied around her eyes as a blindfold, took his coat off and put it on the girl and pulled the hood up.
Incredibly, at approximately 5 p.m. on Sunday, the 26th of November, John Taylor then walked a terrified Leanne Tiernan the 22 minutes back to his house through an estate and even over a busy road.
She was now in the clutches of this predator.
Once at his house, he took her upstairs and tied her hands with cable ties.
She kicked out at him, and he grabbed her, and he says she fell on the floor and banged her head, and there was blood all over the place. And that's how she died.
It was a story that contradicted the evidence.
Now, we had a problem explaining how Leanne hadn't died from a head injury. She'd died from strangulation. The cable tie that was used to kill her had been pulled to such an extent, so tight it was only 10 centimetres in diameter. He hadn't killed her by accident. He'd strangled her.
John Taylor was doing his best to avoid a murder charge, but DSI Gregg wasn't about to let that happen.
We put an identity parade together, and the lady who'd seen the man with the dog hanging around, talking to children, who she was uneasy about, picked him out.
The identification was a persuasive argument for the police's case that this had been a well-planned crime. But there was one crucial bit of evidence missing.
One of the more grim aspects of the scene was that a dog was buried in the garden. And this was a dog that had essentially been hit over the head with a shovel, it appeared. And unfortunately, the dog was in such, again, advanced state of decay that it wasn't suitable for us to DNA test, so we just decided not to pursue that line in the end.
It was a blow that, despite all the effort, the dog DNA was unusable. Officers carried on questioning Taylor.
He denied freezing Leanne's body, but we know it was frozen through the medical evidence. what his story was that after he'd killed her, he didn't know what to do with her body. So to start with, he took it into the back garden and put Leanne's body under a lot of pallets and tried to hide it that way until he could think what to do with her.
Police knew for certain that Leanne had been frozen. They just didn't know why.
Maybe he considered it wiser to actually keep the body inside his house than to put it in the landscape that was currently undergoing a very thorough search.
Another theory was that John Taylor kept Leanne frozen as a morbid trophy he could continually revisit for his grotesque pleasure. Next, he claimed he took her to Lindley Wood just days after killing her.
We know that Leanne's body had only been in the woods for a maximum of a week, and there was a witness who saw a man a week before the body was found lifting a bundle out of the boot of a car that matched John Taylor's description, that matched the description of his car, taking it into the woods.
John Taylor was charged, and then on the 8th of July 2002, over 18 months after 16-year-old Leanne Tiernan went missing, he stood trial at Leeds Crown Court for her kidnap and murder. Faced with the overwhelming evidence against him, he changed his plea.
Taylor had been trying to minimise his part in Leanne's death, claiming it was an accident, an unfortunate accident. But right at the end, he knew he had to face the prosecution case.
There was a great relief to the family not having to go through a whole trial, and he was convicted.
He was described as a sadistic sexual predator by the judge, told he would never be released from prison. That changed, of course, with the new Sentencing Act. He was sentenced to 30 years. But that's the calibre of this individual. He's a killer, shows no remorse. Not once would he have had any compassion for this young girl in his clutches, only what he wanted to do with her.
The local community welcomed the news.
I think there was a sense of relief after it had all come to a head, that somebody had been prosecuted for this crime. But I don't think an area can ever go back to the same again, because you're always wary of other things that might happen.
I would find it hard to forgive him, although we have to forgive him. Obviously an evil man. He'd planned to get somebody, and Leanne just happened to be there. And a cruel man. All the dead animals that he'd just battered to death. I can't understand him.
After 12 months of frustration and dead ends, Leanne's killer had finally been brought to justice.
The case that was built by the whole team was one that there was no wriggle room for John Taylor whatsoever. And I think that's just testament to the professional and thorough job that everyone on this case did.
You don't often witness where killers of this propensity and cruelty are, here in front of you, being sentenced, and the words poured on them from the bench. But whilst it did bring to an end one part of the investigation into John Taylor, it wasn't the final chapter. Because in our minds there was more to tell. This couldn't be the first time that he'd done this.
As a result of Leanne's murder inquiry, police reopened at least 10 cold case investigations looking at Taylor, convinced this wasn't a one-off. And less than a year after his conviction, Taylor pleaded guilty to 2 separate rapes.